these are the problem areas. This is where we need to fix it. We need a tracer player. We need somebody to communicate more. We need, a Lucio with confidence and somebody, who's really, really good at Brig.
We kept making fun of him for being fat because he was bulking for so long, and then he went on a cut and he kept saying like, it's so hard to focus nowadays. Coluge is telling me like cutting is really hard, and it's like, wow, this guy's playing noticeably worse. Let's fire him. Let's not tell him to eat more. Let's fire him.
Do you know whose players never go on a cut?
Until like a week before playoffs when he started playing Rust with the rest of the team.
It's a great game.
like all our Koreans like 3 weeks before playoffs played like a week of Rust, and then like me and Crusty had a talk, and I was like, we have to IP ban Rust. Like this can't go. We have to IP ban Rust. So we banned Rust from the like team house, and people started playing Overwatch again. They said verbatim, yes, you can sign him. So we offer him. Shock is offering him. He's still deciding where to go. Another league team complains about the rules and not being able to sign Vega.
Guaranteed.
Maybe that's
Florida.
Fair.
It would be Albert for sure, dude.
I don't know what
100% Albert. Yeah. It's always him.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 6 of Uncoachable. We've got a lot of new viewers to welcome thanks to our newfound fame and success, but despite what you might think, there's not actually a lot of money in podcasting. So despite our recent fame, we're not actually making bank off it. Look at Chris. He can't afford a single thing to go on his wall. I can't even afford hair anymore. Poor old Max has to literally live in Australia. Can you imagine?
That's the worst, sure.
But today's guest can hopefully solve all of our problems because he is currently the richest man in Overwatch, the only man still with a full-time salary of any note. It's Casores. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So this episode might work a little bit more like Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, where me, Chris, and Unter try and vie for a job on the new Toronto team, or maybe you could sponsor the podcast as well. So any initial interest in sponsoring the pod or getting free assistant coaches?
As the person that decides all of Toronto's financials, I'd love to have a Toronto Uncoachable podcast. That would work out great for us.
Yeah. We're going to add the little bell, sponsored by Bell, to the bottom of the right now. I'm thinking.
Right. We should do that. We should actually start all of Toronto's sponsors, just put them on before they get interested. Just so
jump the gun.
When Adam looks at it, he's like, whoa, these guys, they got something good going on here.
So let's start there then. Can you tell us why have they hired you? Not in like a cynical way, but what's the purpose? What's your role? What are you doing while there's like not a lot of Overwatch tournaments happening?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So basically the way we view it still with Toronto is Overwatch still has a big viewer base. Like Overwatch League might be over, and all the players were let go, all the coaches were let go, except for a handful, which I am lucky to be a part of. And the way it basically worked is I wasn't on a 1-year contract last year. I was actually on, a multi-year contract. And throughout the season, we felt like we created like a really good system with Toronto. It was a rocky start, and we can get into it more later. But as the season went on, we felt like we built something like good with our day-to-day. And it really started becoming a flowing stream of how the team worked. And we wanted to really build on that because I feel like teams that, have like the 2-year system or have worked multi-years work better. Look at Florida Mayhem this year, right? Last year, they weren't as good a team. They built on what they had and made it better. So we really wanted to do that with Toronto. But obviously the Overwatch League died. So I made some concessions, they made some concessions, and we basically came together and said, we want to be in whatever is next for Overwatch esport. I want security, right? I think that's the most valuable good for any coach, especially right now, and players too. So we came to, an agreement. I lowered my salary. They extended my contract, give and take. and I'm still brought on. And what I can do with that is, start building for next year, create coaching documents, build on the system we already had, already start looking at the players I want to sign, and basically get a head start in order to, get a better result next year.
You lucky cunt.
Unbelievable.
Actually, fucking unbelievable. I
I feel
can't
like
lie.
you guys, assuming you want to, you could actually just build an unbelievable roster, because there's actually no one that's going to say no to you at this stage. Like, who's going to steal any player from you? I feel like if you're willing to go early, and maybe it ends up being a terrible gamble depending on what does come next, but you actually have like every single Overwatch player in the world available to sign, and no one can stop you.
Yeah, I do feel like, this whole like 2-year system or whatever, it definitely makes more sense when it's like, you're building a roster over the course of years because people are contracted, like the known talent is locked in somewhere. So I feel like the whole idea of like a slow roster build just goes out the fucking window if every single player in the world is a free agent, except for like, 5 guys in Saudi Arabia. So yeah, I mean, maybe your first year was a bit slow with the we're building up a successful roster, but I feel like you're really, with the current position that you're in, there's really no excuse to not just like absolutely turn it up to 11 with what you build. As you're the only horse in the race. We don't even know what we're racing in right now, unless the goal is to win flash
first over the line.
Finally, time for Toronto to spend some money on Overwatch. Like all these years, like this poor budget team just mid-table trying to make it work. Finally, they can spend a few dollars and get a real super team.
Let's not cook the guy too hard.
I also think, the thing is, Toronto still wants to make money next year, so we can't just go out and sign everybody right now without knowing what's going to happen, like we are just as much as anybody, like kind of waiting to see what happens before we sign the majority of our team. But, maybe 1 or 2 key players that we could sign early, or look at like what we already want to build or be in talks with people. I think, as a coach, being able to go to players and being like, I actually represent a team that can pay a salary is, a massive boost, no matter or not we can give that salary right now or in, a month.
But it's a luxury, right? Because if you wanted, you could lock every player you wanted down right now. But also in a month's time, in 2 months' time, in 3 months' time, it's still going to be the best offer on the market by a large margin. Yeah. So you actually just get full privilege.
You better win.
Win what? Nobody knows. You better win.
Whatever it is, flash ops.
They're actually too late to get involved in flash ops.
Flash ops season 2.
Oh, the future of Overwatch.
Is there any indication, like, do Toronto want an American team, or do they want a European team, or do you just get a pick?
Well, if I'm the coach, obviously it's more Western based, right? That's the one thing I can't say. How that's gonna look right now, we don't know, right? There's so many things up in the air for next year too. If they take a page out of like other esports, there might be an import lock. It depends on where the tournaments are as well to make it make sense. So I think obviously, we're gonna be Western, and my preference leans towards mixed teams, because I've always had most success with mixed teams in the 5 years that I've been in the Overwatch League, right? And I think that's something we can get into a little bit more later too. But yeah, right now we're looking to go Western based, but mixed teams not out of the question. And also my Korean's getting pretty good at this point. I started learning in season 2 out of spite because I got let go because I didn't speak Korean. So at this point, out of spite, my Korean's gotten good enough to be conversational.
Letting go from Atlanta Reign for not speaking Korean is absolutely fucking crazy. I can't lie. Because I feel like if that team picks up anyone from Europe, and then at the end of the year they're like, "Yeah, man, we really liked what you were doing here, but it's a bit weird that you don't speak Korean." Like I don't know what they were expecting from the onset there.
Well, how was your Korean Unter? Presumably you were fluent, right? And that's why they locked you in.
Yeah, no. The reason that they
language.
wanted to keep me going into 2022 was because I'm fluent in Korean, as almost everyone in the league knows. That's why I was able to step into Casores' shoes so seamlessly in the following year. I'm actually noticing this is a bit of a trend where I step into jobs that Casores seemingly had. Oh, geez, can't keep getting away with it. Actually,
God.
This close on Twisted, mate. This close.
Let's transition to not the future Toronto Super Team, but the previous Toronto Super Team. Nah,
Which one?
the last season, the AT team. So obviously there was actually a lot of hype on this roster, mainly probably from Americans more than other people, but a lot of hype into this roster. You were obviously quite confident quite early on that you wanted this core of players, and you got basically everyone you wanted, give or take Reiner. So going into the season, you're quite excited and quite probably high expectations, like top half of the table, I'd imagine. Then what starts to happen as we actually get into the season and the results don't come that way?
Yeah, so let's take it to the offseason. So I was brought on Toronto after the grand finals, and I already noticed that during the grand finals, most teams, like the top teams, already started locking in their players. Atlanta already started reaching out. Shock already had some of the guys on lock, right? So it was starting to be a shrinking pool, and I had to basically build a team from scratch, right? Because Toronto was looking to do one of their rebuilds, hopefully to end all rebuilds, but obviously that didn't work out the way they wanted to. No, so I got brought on Toronto, and they really wanted to like go Western, right? One, just because last year full Korean didn't work out. Two, because it's easier to bring in marketable people and sponsorships. And Toronto, actually, one thing they've done really well is get sponsors for the team. So I was like, if I'm Western, American Tornadoes on the table. A couple teams are talking to them, but they really want to stay together. And, I've worked with Coluge and Sam before. I feel like I should jump on that boat and get, the full American Tornado, because as much as you might hate it, they are still the best North American players. It's just that North America apparently isn't that good at Overwatch if you look at the World Cup. So, bringing them in, I think I was quite excited. I think, the talent on the roster is undeniable. It's just, I think a lot of the things that plagued us, especially in the first stage, just like a couple other teams here, is the meta, right? The meta, right? Sombra Tracer is not Western players, their style. Winston one, Sombra Tracer is not Western players' style. So I think that's really stung us. And then also, I feel like a team is really good when it has like a great team atmosphere, but I feel like our atmosphere was almost too good. And a lot of people were like saying like, oh, Toronto boomed, Toronto this, but actually we never boomed. We actually like practiced like pretty hard, and we reviewed, and I think maybe at some points in the first half of the season, we didn't put in enough hours, like, the Korean teams that are doing free scrim blocks a day, reviewing 3 hours afterwards. We had a solid system going where we do like a review, 2 scrims, and we'd review for like an hour to 2 hours after that. And then the players were like mentally clocked out, right? We couldn't force any more down their throat. That was it. In the second half of the season, we realized like that has to go up. But I think first half, right, I think struggled with one, the meta. 2, I think we lacked leadership because Coluge is an insane mechanical player. But on Shock, we had proper hand feed him, like, Coluge, you have to dive here. Coluge, you have to dive that. This is your job, right? And that really worked because Coluge is really good at like following on Winston. But I think, when we had Speedily on Tracer, who is also off-rolling and uncomfortable, and then also not like a native Sombra player, and Sombra as a caller is also hard. It's like there was no like deciding factor who will make the hard calls, and I think in a meta where you have to have somebody pull the trigger on, hey, we're going to dive this, we're going to do that, we're going to play this comp. It ended up not working out. And at the first part of the stage 1, I personally thought, and we had the Shock and the Gladiators match, we could play like the counter style team, right? Because we have Coluge, he is really flexible. So I almost wanted to be like a Florida Mayhem, where we would have Coluge swap around and we would counter teams. And this would work really well initially. If you look at our first Shock match, for example, on New Queen Street, we were playing a Rhine comp to counter their Queen comp because they always rolled out Queen on this map. And we got to like 70 meters and they swapped a Winston comp to counter our Rhine comp. And we decided to just mirror after that because, you're ahead, you can mirror. And we just absolutely shit the bed and lost that match, So after that, and to take one of your guys' analogies from your earlier episode, it's like we started to try and grow one tree and just focus on the dive and get better at that, then trying to like counter stuff. Yeah, as an avid uncoachable watcher.
Let's go.
Amazing.
Guys, the sponsorship's coming. I can feel it.
Yeah, it's for sure.
Yeah, no, we're so locked in for this.
So I wanted to know, when this off season came in, I think for me looking at it, there was like 4 teams where I thought, fuck me, these teams are going to like struggle. I thought Boston were going to be like washed up and terrible. Clearly didn't age that well, especially from a London perspective. I felt that Washington and Atlanta had built like the worst mixed teams possible, where it was so obvious that in the case of Washington, that the talent of the Koreans was so much higher than the talent of the Westerners, that there was almost no way that there wasn't going to be unlimited friction. And I was thinking, get amazed. What you've just done here is you've built a roster which will result in you being fired immediately. I felt with Gator, I felt the same. I was like, okay, if this team has any problems, Gator, you are aware that you are just going to be fired from this team, and they get like Koreans in. And then with your team, I thought, okay, Casores, you were assistant coach for 3 years before this season. So you actually went through a very, very similar as me, right? I did 3 years assistant coach and I went into head coach. And when I went into head coach, I thought, I need to make sure that at least the team that I'm coaching is manageable in terms of, I really didn't want to take too many risks. I didn't want to risk double flex support in case it was a problem. So I just said, okay, just one main support, one flex support. I didn't want to mix Koreans and Westerns because I thought that can cause me problems. I thought head coach is so hard. I just need to build a team that's manageable and then get my feet and then see what happens. And obviously you didn't mix Koreans, at least not right away. But I thought, fucking hell, at least from what I know, and to be fair, I would say now, after I've actually met like Coluge and Hydra in Atlanta, I think they are more reasonable people than maybe their reputation originally. I thought the head coach of like that full AT team, I thought that's one of those things where things go wrong, I could see that team sticking together and just immediately booting the coach. Were you not like slightly scared that you'd like effectively built a roster where the first person to go would be you? Clearly didn't happen, but was there any part of you which considered that?
No, of course, right? When you get a team that's so close together, right, and they basically said, we want to play together, and we want to, we all took 1-year contracts last year to be on a team together. It's just I already had, pre-built, synergy with Coluge, with Sam, so I had, 2 cores in that roster who are, big leaders of that roster, especially after Reiner didn't join, which might have made the team a little bit more volatile, as Max might know. But that wouldn't help you. That didn't end up happening. So basically, I had the respect of the players with the biggest voices on that team already. And I think a lot of the time as a coach, if you have the respect of the player that's basically the captain, you can get away with a lot of shit. Not to say I did a lot of shit, but I think at the start of the year, I really tried to have more a player-based approach, because that's what AT's used to. That's when they really strived and they did good. So I tried to have more of a player-based approach where I just led the feedback, I mediated situations, and I let them, try and improve on their own and really basically bring back the AT spirit. That's why I also brought in Wheats, right, to really cultivate that. But I think in the Overwatch League, the power of friendship does not prevail. The stories are false. Life is not an anime. And, it really didn't end up working. And once you start losing as like a team that came in with so much confidence, like we're gonna shit on everybody, you know, the excuses start coming out. Oh, if only we had Reiner, if only we had this, and it you know, it didn't work out in the long run. I think, you know, meta leadership, I've mentioned some of the problems, but I think biggest thing is, you know, once we started losing those first 2 games against Shock and Glady, who also weren't like super good teams at that time, especially Shock. And we felt like we should do better, especially based on our scrim results up to that point. It's like, where are we going wrong? You know, where do we solve the issue? Where do we plug the holes? So I tried starting Sam more, right, in the week after that, and really like making sure we have like a solid 5 going in instead of like continuing to swap characters. I think, you know, it's tough. I think confidence played a big part in why we failed. And also, to get to your point of why I signed Majed, it's like at the start of the year we already knew 2 support characters are coming out, so I was like, okay, 2 support is natural, right? If I have the extra money, I know Majed is like super good at picking up new characters because his Kiriko in like the first 2 weeks like really impressed me. Afterwards, like the new Kiriko playstyle, just heal botting, came out and he's less good at that. But I was like, if any of these supports are like a Zen, right, which ended up happening with Alari, it's like a really good boon to have. And, you know, in the end, he was really good for us. And were it in another world, he would have been the reason we made it to playoffs. And he won the World Cup. So
I do feel like Reiner, like he would have made like a really positive impact on your team, because it does sound like, you know, you did have this like massive gaping hole in leadership. Reiner wasn't much of a scrim leader, to be fair, but you know, when it came down to match time, he definitely was like a very good leader in game and actually did have a really high level understanding of the game. I do feel like your roster that you built at the start, the AT one, if you'd had like literally any other meta, like if it hadn't just been half a fucking season of Sombra Tracer, the team would have looked so much better, like whether or not you had Reiner, you know? But you just had like the AT killer meta for like the longest time. You had the one where like there's 100 Korean players that can fill the slots and make it work, and there's just nobody in the West that can play that shit. So you guys definitely got like hard fucked on patch for the longest time. But did you ever feel like that AT roster could be like truly great, or were you always just competing for like upper mid?
Going in, I was thinking top 5, right? Like I wasn't thinking like we're gonna win, but I was thinking like we might edge out that 5th spot over some of these other teams. And I think, like you said, right, like the meta really fucked us. I think Reiner not coming in the end kind of fucked us.
Yeah,
but
because I feel like edging top 5, you know, getting the 5th slot, that's about like as realistic as you can be with that team. But if you were trying to do like a 2-year roster thing, like was that the goal? Like you pick up all of AT, and then in the second year you get more good people. Like what was the vision there? You know, because you said at the start that you had like a 2-year plan for things. If you're getting all of AT, what are you doing in the second year? Not to like steal your scouting of the, you know, the hot new talent, but you know, what was your long-term vision there?
Yeah,
if you're picking up this one group of friends,
just my philosophy on it is like, these are the best American players, and if you want to build like any sort of mixed team, your Westerners need to bring value more than anything, right? Your Koreans need to see that the Westerners on the team are irreplaceable by their friends, right? In some way or another, whether it be culture or just play. I think that's one of the reasons why in Shock, you know, season 3 and season 4, our Westerners were undeniably really good. Like Super, I think one of the best Western players of all time, right? Is undeniable, a good leader. You need him. So your Korean players see why you want to have a Westerner, which is why I like Chris's point earlier that Washington was doomed to fail just because their balance wasn't there. So I wanted to, in my long-term plan, right, build that balance, start with a real strong Western core. If it works out, if we're the best team, right, amazing, right? Keep doing this. Let's keep it going. But I wanted to transition the team more and more into like a coach-based team as the season went on. And, you know, losing sped up things, right? But losing always speeds up things. But I think just in the long-term plan, the vision is always to have the best players regardless of region and have a Western core where the core is really strong, right? So I think, the core that we kept for the second half of the season, for example, was like the better part of what we had at that point. I think Ultraviolet and Coluge for the second half of the season is like a really good core to build upon, and then adding pieces like Spectra, like Opener, going into that ended up really helping us regardless of meta, because I think Spectra is really good because he calls a lot more than, Speedily does. So regardless of Speedily's talent, which I think is really high, I think Coluge really needed that flex DPS that like tells him to push and tells him, what to do. And I think Spectra like really came in clutch with that, also with his amazing English.
Yeah, that was one thing that always impressed me, because to be fair, one thing that Toronto was your content this year was actually such high level. I can't remember what it's called, the series where you whatever it's called, where you like it goes all the behind the scenes stuff. I was like, okay, this is actually really high quality put together content with like good storylines, good like camera work, like the players were being like honest. And I was looking at the viewers, I'm like, oh, this league is so doomed, because this is actually what people in theory should want to see, and nobody wants to see it. But yeah, one thing that really impressed me was both Open and Spectra's like English was super high level, it felt like. And I think obviously we'll probably talk a lot about like the mixed versus like full like Korean or full Western rosters, because obviously maybe we disagree slightly there. But I think if you are to do a mixed roster, I think what you said is true, where you need to get high level Westerners. And if you can get Koreans with really high level English, that takes a massive part of the burden away from the players playing together, and also like getting to know each other.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think a lot of the reason why we picked up Opener and Spectra is because of their English. I think there was a lot of main supports I could have picked up at the time, right? But I think Opener's English really sold that for me. And I think Spectra, like the second I talked to him, I was like, this guy is going to go great with our team, because he has like that energy to bounce off of the rest of the team. And I think Hydron and Spectra actually like had so much like synergy together, and they like really respected each other, and they ended up being roommates. And I think that helped us a lot too, where these new players were integrated so fast. And with the Canada visa, it was like we only took like 3 weeks to get somebody over, right? For all these American teams, it's like you can't get Koreans in the middle of the season because the process is like 2.5 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
Unter knows all about it. But, we were able to get them like in the mid-season, and they were already there scrimming with us like a week before, our next matches started.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you talk about like how much you considered the English level of your import pickups, because it's like with that Marvel pickup that we had in the middle of the year for Gladiators, which is like a little ill-fated, we'll put it that way. Like that guy had a really low level of English, and like in the whole process of like considering we're gonna murder Dante in his sleep and replace him with Marvel, like barely at all was the conversation raised of like, can this guy speak English? And then when the conversation was like, can this guy speak English? It's like, yeah, he'll learn.
He'll be fine.
He'll be
always
fine.
what they say.
And it's like,
and
it's interesting.
It's like, oh yeah.
And it's crazy, like to think about it with the benefit of hindsight, because it's like we had so many problems with Yaki. Like I flamed the fuck out of Yaki last episode, but just to like double down, like fuck that guy. We had so much trouble with Yaki's like level of English. Like he was just really, really low level English, like terrible understanding, and it felt like the progress was just so slow. Like he came in at the start, and like right from the beginning, he was just the type of guy where instead of saying I don't understand, he would just say yes.
Yeah.
So it was like we would never know when he didn't get it, and he would never fucking get it. So it was like as the year was progressing, we'd have these like delusional conversations in the coach room where it's like, do you think Yaki's getting better at English? And it's like, yep. Yeah, he's coming along, But it's like the fact that we got like halfway through the year and it was like, fuck, like we're really struggling with like Sombra Tracer, like talking about, like it was so clear, it was so fucking obvious that Yaki was way better at Sombra than Kai, right? Like just his like natural level of play was way higher than Kai's. But Kev always wanted to play with Kai because Kev just couldn't say anything to Yaki. Nobody could say anything to Yaki. I remember Dante probably said to Yaki 20 times, dude, if you find the enemy server's translocator, just break it and come fight with us, because you're just sitting AFK doing nothing and we don't even kill her. And then even after saying this so many times to Yaki in English, obviously, I remember watching a match, and on the stream, it's like the final loss versus Houston Outlaws, and I can see Yaki standing on a translocator just talking. And it's like, some of this stuff, you know, maybe he was a bit troubled with learning, but at the end of the day, like, if you all spoke the same language, that message would have gotten across 100 times over, you know, like, it just wouldn't be fucking happening. And then we went to the Marvel point, and it was like, we've got the exact same issue again. It's actually crazy that we didn't think really long and hard about, like, are we fucking ourselves by introducing another person that doesn't speak English here? Like, is this going to be a problem?
But the same for Washington, right? Like, I felt like they signed just the best players they could, and they're like, fuck it, it'll be fine. Like, to my knowledge, Alpha Yi didn't really speak any English, and I don't think progressed too much throughout the season. The same with Flora and stuff. And they, like, the other thing with Washington is they were so shoestring budget that who was their assistant coach at the start of the season that was like also, he was the Paris coach, J-Mac. I think he came as like their translator or something. So he was assistant coach / translator / presumably team manager. And
like, his English is not good. So I interviewed him in the offseason. His English is bare bones.
Well, that's it. So they don't bring any infrastructure. They don't bring Koreans that either have good English or some sort of history in mixed teams, and they just let them go. J-Mac retires after like 2 weeks of the season. And it's every time that team was winning, I was like, how is this team not exploded yet? And at least finally at the end it did explode, because it felt like it was absolutely inevitable.
Ironically, they actually finished above both our teams, all three of our teams, in the halfway stage.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you know, that was just incredible roster construction from Get Amazed, I suppose. I do feel like that team, though, like, if they just hadn't picked up 2 French players, like, they would have been better. You know, like, you can say that it's a language problem here, but it's like, Mirror is like, he's missed a mixed roster, you know? Like, you throw Mirror on a mixed roster, like, he'll make it work, you know? He's actually, like, quite a good figure. But I do feel like that team, you know, like, they picked up Teru, and I mean, like, I probably wouldn't pick up Teru the Terrorist for any of my teams. Just like that guy had like a really, 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 really bad reputation from the, what was it, like Titans days? Like on Spark, I think he was actually like pretty decent on the support. So like, I guess I can kind of see the case for it, but I don't think he was like a standout talent at any point, you know, start to finish. It was never like, I've got a budget roster, Teru's that fucking guy, you know? He's my hidden gem. And like, given that he had like a really, really bad reputation from another mixed roster, like, I just heard terrible things from like his time on Titans. Admittedly, it was a terrible team, but just like, you know, overall, when you hear bad stuff about people when they're losing, you don't want to put them into a volatile environment. So taking Teru, who's known to struggle on a mixed roster, and then sticking him with fucking FD God and Ben Best, it's like you're just asking for trouble, no? Like, you're really just taking the piss at some point. Like, Mirror, I can see the case for Mirror making it on that team, but Ben and fucking FD. Let's get the picture up of fucking Teru praying or Flora praying when Ben Best gets subbed in.
Honestly, that team, if it wasn't for Alpha Yi putting up one of the best performances I've ever seen in an Overwatch League season, where I've actually never seen it. I don't think I've ever seen a team more solo carried than this season's Washington. Like, Alpha Yi and every scrimming official just had a perfect KD, and everyone else's team was like 1 in 10. If it wasn't for Alpha Yi in that team, because if anyone else had done good scouting and realized that this guy was actually like one of the best players on planet Earth, that team is like, I actually think that team is like competing with like Valiant and Vegas at like the bottom. Like, it was so doomed.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, Alpha Yi was truly so far above everyone else on that team. Like, just insane. I think Flora was like all right, you know, but like
he's good at like a couple characters, right?
Yeah, I mean,
he would always be losing, and then he'd like swap to Hanzo, and then he'd just find magic picks. But like until he swapped to Hanzo, he was like, in some matches he was just a server exister. But like the performances Alpha was putting up, and he wasn't just trying to carry. I feel like he was also like side angle controlling, and not to get too into it, and he was good at Genji and Echo and Tracer, right? He's like, he was like almost a full package, it felt like.
Yeah, no, he really like filled every shoe as required for that whole year. So, you know, big shout out to the big man Get Amazed for that scout. That's RIP, brother.
Not too soon.
But yeah, he did do actually one really good thing with that roster in getting Alpha E on a 50K contract. So I got to respect
it. Which
Alpha E probably doesn't feel the same
technically.
about it.
Poor little Alpha E.
Don't they, Washington have that contract where they're still under contract, but we won't pay you, but you're not allowed to go anywhere else? That type of
I think
Who's it? Florable still
illegal
contracted?
contract.
I think Danny might have to reread that
Wait,
contract.
they're
It's quite- like, it
contracted,
doesn't make
but they're
sense.
not getting paid?
It's like a
Yeah, so
salary-less
you-
contract.
Yeah. If you're a real Uncoachable fan, you would have seen it on episode 2, but
Oh, I might have skipped over that part.
that was before we blew up, you know.
What when you were making your roster decisions at the midway stage, what order did it happen in? Did you think like we need to get Spectre in because he's so good, or was it here are the problem areas we need to get rid of and then we need to find replacements for these positions?
So yeah, basically, especially after the London game, if you've watched Source Code, you could tell that the London loss in stage 1
I
was
watched
like
it.
really a turning point in my mind where this team cannot be top 5 anymore. No matter what happens, no matter what meta we get, we were so stuck in doing nothing, right? Like we were hitting good nades and we had good setups, and then we just wait. And it was really like we'd never done this in scrims. We would take that dive. We would push that, you know? But in that match, I was like, after that, and after, you know, the whole like play in for the midseason, it was like we can't perform above this level until we get God's given meta, which might have happened at the end. But you know, after that, I was like, these are the problem areas. This is where we need to fix it. We need a tracer player. We need somebody to communicate more. We need, you know, a Lucio with confidence and somebody, you know, who's really, really good at Brig. So I felt take the Brig first and put the Lucio second almost is what I felt for the second half. And I felt like Opener had a really good Brig. His Lucio is serviceable. And, you know, also being almost half as cheap as OG helped. You know, so we pulled like Spectra and Opener on like really, really good contracts too, right? So we are paying too much for a roster that's losing. We have problem areas that we can fix. So I felt like instead of riding out the season with this roster and trying to improve incrementally, you know, I felt like changes need to happen. And I'm all for, right, like improving incrementally, but I also felt like some players weren't putting in the effort as much as they should. So we need, right, to bring in the Koreans to show them the hardworking culture that we need
So
to
which of the players that you cut with the lazy fucks then?
I was
'Cause
going to say,
talking
you're on
in
the
general
wrong
terms.
podcast. You can't say some players. We are very specific about names. I don't know if you've heard the concept of burning bridges, but that's really what we try to do here where possible.
No, I think it's no secret that Speedily played a lot more Valorant than he did Overwatch in his spare time. I think OD still worked really hard. He was always sitting and VOD viewing with Ultraviolet, but he didn't enjoy the game as much at the time, right? So those are obviously the ones we let go. I think OG, when he went to New York, he had like a newfound fire and started just grinding the game because I saw him in every ranked game after that. Didn't help their results, but
Do you think that Opener and OG, like, do you think that, ignore the budgetary stuff, do you think that was like actually an upgrade or like a side grade or?
no, I felt like on Brig, he's like Opener's really good on Brig. On Lucio and Mercy, I felt it was a downgrade, right? But I was like, we have to cut budget
You think on
somewhere.
Brig it was an upgrade? Because I mean, all I ever saw from Opener on Brig was him like bashing into the hole or something. Like I don't think that guy was an especially good anything. Just between you, me, and everyone watching the podcast. But like, yeah,
I felt like he understood the character better, and despite the you know whole bashing accident,
it
Opener
happens,
dealt
it
with a lot of nerves, especially at the start. As the season went on, it got better. All right, so I'll tell you guys. So on Washington,
happens.
in the full Korean roster, Opener is the youngest player. He's the kid. He's the 18-year-old who just came
He's
in
the dong
playing
hat.
with a couple of these guys, and he got bullied. Like he got
What?
like bullied by
In a
A
Korean
Korean team?
coaches
No.
You fucking
and-
racist.
Get out.
and players. So his confidence was just down the drain, and I interviewed him like to come on Toronto, and he was like, I don't even know if I'm good enough for Owl. Like last year, really shook me, and I was like, I've seen your VODs. I think you're the best option we have. And
You
let's
just lied
give
to
it
the
a
kid.
let's give it a shot together, and I think in a couple of the matches he actually had a really good performance. Like in the Boston match where we absolutely choked on Midtown, fucked up all our EMPs. He actually had a really, really good performance, and I think overall, I think he was a side grade to OG, and I think the culture he brought in and the way he worked with Ultraviolet was actually really good.
Okay. Just overall with what you're saying about the weaknesses of this roster, I feel like Coluge is actually just getting buried this year. Like the more that I think about it, because it's like, in the first half of the year we were really struggling with like leadership and having someone that can push, and then in the second half of the year you guys get the perfect meta, and still you manage to fumble it somehow when the what was it Gator was saying, when the lights are a bit too bright, when the pressure is on, you still manage to fumble, and then you look over to World Cup. And Coluge is getting benched for the exact stuff that you're complaining about on his best hero again, where there's just like no leadership and super passive, Like those guys goes versus Team Saudi Arabia, and the Saudis are just fucking mashing their buttons in Coluge's face, like just walking into him and pressing rock and hoping that they hit the button, Like that's the winning strategy. And Coluge is just trying to AFK his way to a win.
I will say though, on Coluge, when he's on a comfortable character, right? On Winston, I don't think he can lead, but when he's on a comfortable character like Orisa or Sigma, he actually like dictated the tempo a lot. He's like, I want to hold here, I want to hold there, and we'd coach, and I'd be like, how do you want to lead this? Do you want to play slow or fast? And I'd keep asking him these questions, and like keep like making him think. And I felt like toward the later end of the season, he started like leading a lot more. Right, like
so really, Team USA needed Casores to be asking all of the big questions to Coluge, and then maybe he would have opened his mouth and not gotten benched for Super, is what I'm hearing.
I don't know what happened on Team USA, but I know, like for example, in the Boston match and in the London match, Coluge is calling a lot more on Orisa than he is on Winston, and he's a lot more comfortable. I noticed that with a lot of players, and you guys might have noticed this with Landon, for example, right? On Ana, he actually doesn't lead as much, but on BAP he like leads a lot, right? From what I saw, for example, in the Team USA tryouts, stuff like that. So I think sometimes a player just needs to be on a character they understand more, they understand the tempo of the game. And Coluge will never be like Super where he can lead every fight and make every call, but I don't think you need every player to be like that. I think if you build a supporting cast around it, you can make that work too. And I was watching one of your guys' earlier episodes too, and I think you guys hit the nail on the head, because against the Doomfist comp, I actually think Coluge Sigma is a lot better of an option than Super. But in like the mirror comps, it's always like your skill hitting doesn't matter, right? You just need an understanding of the game, and you need to feel the tempo, and you need to play the game that way. So I think Coluge getting shit on. I think in World Cup he shouldn't have gone on that cut. That must have been it.
The lethal cut.
Because actually, during the Toronto season 2, he went on a cut one time, and he didn't stop talking. He was just moody all the time. Like he was trying to like.
Wait,
go on a
which
cut,
part of the
and he was
season did he go on the cut?
Like at the start of the second stage. And then, like, after 2-3 weeks in, I told him, you have to stop this cut. This is bullshit. You're moody all the time. Like, I took him in a room, and I'm like, you're so moody lately. Your teammate said this to you, and you reacted that way. Why? He's like, it must be the cut, like that.
I'm not going to lie, dude. It's like, before we cut Dante, he went on a cut. We kept making fun of him for being fat because he was bulking for so long, and then he went on a cut, and he kept saying like, it's so hard to focus nowadays. Coluge is telling me like cutting is really hard, and it's like, wow, this guy's playing noticeably worse. Let's fire him. Let's not tell him to eat more. Let's fire him.
Do you know whose players never go on a cut? Get it made.
Oh,
Get amazed. His
Ice
players
cream
are
diet.
being moody.
ice cream beats.
Pizza. No focus problems on Washington. Another
That-
+1 for Get amazed.
They're always bulking, never sulking on Washington.
That's it.
Oh,
That's it.
it's unbelievable we've solved all of Toronto's problems, all of Team USA's problems, and potentially any future team's problems at all, just through nutrition.
Just pizza and ice cream.
Yeah.
So then when we get to the second half of the season, suddenly you look like a good dive team. Everything starts going well. And then the meta you'd been praying all season for comes along. You've got yourself in a good spot in play-ins. And then everything's going pretty well. The only teams you lose to Boston, who obviously end up being one of the better teams. And then you lose to us as well, which is probably the one that hurts the most.
Well, actually, looking back, I'd say the Boston loss hurt the most because I think we never lost to that comp ever, right? Like we felt like the Baptiste Olari against the Lucio Bap Arissa, we had that mirror, like, or it's not a mirror. We had that matchup solved, right? We really had it down to a T where I think in the 2 weeks leading up, almost every team was playing that, right? Vancouver, Washington, except us two. Basically, every team was playing that comp. And I felt like the matchup was so good for us because we had Majed play in such a way where he could deny the enemy Genji and just deny them space altogether, where they'd have to be stacked up the whole time of playing. That we won. And even in the Boston match, they mostly won the maps where we didn't have space. They had Lijiang, right? Which I think that's the hardest map for the Olari comp. They had Coliseum, which they won. And then the real shame was, the Circuit Royale, which I think we made some composition calls that weren't good.
I remember I watched it on the sofa, and I think it was me and Hadi, and we got into a big argument because I said Toronto had to pick Route 66. I felt like the way Boston were winning was like you were saying on these narrow maps where they could play fast. I felt you play any big map. I can't remember what else was in the pool. Maybe even like Gibraltar or something, but maybe Route was the best. And I was like, they played the double flex, and Boston don't have an answer because what was map 2 in that series? Like Blizzard World or something, right? Like something big, and I think you destroyed them, and I was like, okay, we need to do that. And then you went Circuit, and I was like, oh, this is a throw. And then Hadi was like, no, because Coluge can just play Sigma and just like gap everyone. And it went to overtime, right? Like the map itself was like insanely close. Like both teams almost double pushed. But I remember that one, I was like, oh, surely that's like a Route 66 angle. And then eventually you guys lost it, so I was proved right. But yeah, I remember it.
I think the big mistake there, like not to get too into the nitty-gritty, is just we started playing Widow Sojourn, which against the Sigma Mirror, that's the best comp, right? But they played like Lucio, Genji, Queen. We should have just played Olari Mei, and honestly, they can't do anything because they push into you. Your Sigma just stands there and shoots, and your Mei just walls the Queen, and there's no angles they can come from on that whole map. That's why we felt like Circa was good. And then when we did that on the second attack, we went like Mei Bastion, and we absolutely shit on them. And the only reason we didn't full cap the map is because Ultraviolet jumped, and like midair, a Bastion bullet hit him right on the head mid jump. I'd never seen that before until that point.
That happened to Lemon too, I think, in one of the crucial Boston.
No, that's
not a one and done.
No, but and then defense, we just go back to Widow Sojourn. We should have just kept playing that Mei Bastion comp, and we should have played it from the start. Mei Sojourn is kind of what I wanted to play, but in hindsight, Mei Bastion's even better. But we felt like we won the Vancouver match. Like the players felt like we won the Vancouver match because we stuck to our guts and because we kept playing the Soldier Torb. Because we lost map 2 in the Vancouver match on Midtown, I think. And then we went to the third map, and some players started losing confidence in the whole Olari comp. But Hydron pulled through, and he said, "No, we're gonna fucking play this comp, and we're gonna play it this way." And he started basically calling every fight, right? Like talking about players that start calling things in the clutch. Hydron came through in that Vancouver match. And like basically told the team what's up, big dicked it. and ended up even carrying that last Dorado round. Was one of the best Widow performances against not a Widow player, of course. I don't know what Heesang was doing over there on the defense, but
it was generational nonetheless,
but it was such a great performance from Hydron that when he called on the last Circuit Royale, I want to play Widow, everybody was like, yes, we have to play Widow. So it was a trusting thing, and it ended up backfiring, but it ended up winning us the match before that too. So I always, as a coach, am like, in hindsight, it was a bad call, but if we'd won that, we would have all praised him,
Yeah.
So it's like, can I really blame him? He was willing to make that call and willing to put his head forward to be chopped up, and in the end, we got chopped up in that Boston match, but I can't blame him for that.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about the Widow pick, but I feel like it was honestly like if you just didn't put Majet on Zen, like you just win, But you just put Majet on Zen, and it's like a brain check, and he's just dead. He's just dead over and over and over again, dude. Like the guy just fucking. Yeah, nah. Like you just put that guy on Alara, and he has a button that can help. Oh, not shooting this deflect would have been prime as well, actually, for Hydron. Bit of feedback there. Don't shoot when the Genji's doing this with his hands. But yeah, Majet on Zen was definitely like. I feel like that was just the difference maker, Like you guys genuinely had this completely in the bag, and Majet just decides he wants to go for a little stroll into their front line. Like here he goes right now.
If there was a hypothetical world where 3 teams got through play-ins and you guys got in, do you think you would have been able to take down quite a few of the teams above you? Because I think based on scrims, you guys were pretty solid. I remember talking to Gunba a lot, and Gunba was basically saying, oh, please just knock Toronto out. Like, we really, we destroy everyone except Toronto. Like, they thought, okay, we really need Toronto to just choke or to do something. Because you guys would never lose to Dive, right, with that comp. Maybe if Spark on LAN, it's a bit of a different story because Team USA. But in scrims and stuff, you guys probably felt pretty comfortable against most teams.
Yeah, no, we felt like our comp, we had it down to like such a T, and we felt like it was generally like really good comp at the time. And the meta also swapping more towards Sigma, I think only would have helped us, right? Because we were already the one team playing Sigma in those play-ins. I felt like the more it goes towards Sigma, the more we can play the angle game, the better it is for Majed, Because he's best when he can just sit still and shoot, which fucked us against you guys because you didn't let us sit back and shoot. You guys kept TPing on Majed, and he turned his brain off and just kept shifting backwards instead of to the team.
Yeah, I think actually... when I look back at our series, I think Majed had the poorest game. Like, obviously, he's made up for it with World Cup and everything, but I remember in scrims, he was such a massive problem for us to deal with, like farming that ult every 4 seconds and it just being like a guaranteed win. And obviously, we worked on like various things, but actually, a lot of the time in scrims, we would never TP onto Alaris massively. We would do little like 2-man TPs or something because it was so hard to kill. But for whatever reason, Jamie just like locked in that series and just like read like everything Majed wanted to do and just like 1v1 them like 4 times like as Symmetra against Alari.
Yeah, no, I think especially let's go to the London series. We felt like we scrimmed you guys a lot and we played the Soldier Torb a lot, right? And eventually we felt like you guys had like a really good read on where the Soldier's going to be, how to shut down the Soldier. So we decided why not play the May Bastion, and we played it the one scrim against you guys. And I thought also in theory, right? Like if the Rhine just has to hold shield the whole time and has to basically trust on TP rotations. I feel like that hinders you guys a lot because if we can screw up your guys' TP plays, that like helps us a lot. And I felt like even when we were up against you guys in like the Soldier Torb and the Soldier May, right? We felt like every time if we just land a good wall on your guys' TPs, we were able to like kind of shut it or split you guys up and make your guys play our tempo. But it felt like the whole series, like in the match, actually, you guys were able to just play your tempo and you guys were able to keep baiting us to use our ults and TP out, right? But I felt like it should actually go like we ult and we should either get a massive amount of space and just get the point, or we could screw up your TP and get a kill, right? But we would ult so early that you guys could just get out. And I think that especially hurt us on New York City and Esperanza. But I felt like as a whole, the May Bastion Alari comp, if you play it, like initially I thought like right after the match, I thought I fucked up. This comp was bad. You know, we screwed up. We should have played a different comp. We should have just played Soldier Torb or whatever we played before. But I went in the replay viewer, like out of spite, you know, like 2 days later, and I watched every POV, and I was just like, we just don't play like this normally. Like Majet was shifting away at times where he needs to just shift back to the team, and he was splitting himself off. Spectra, for some magical reason, unbound his shift button and just didn't get any shifts up before, like, you know, he died. There was an ungodly amount of people dying to window, like Symmetra right clicks, or window,
Yeah,
like
so many that
Bastion right
series.
clicks.
Oh, no, those were unbelievable.
It was. I felt like we had so many like stupid stuff happen, and this is our mistake, right? It's not like unlucky. It's our mistake. That I felt like it was at best a 50-50 matchup for you guys, but it was actually like better for us.
I do feel like you guys, a lot of teams in the league, I think they don't use like any data, any statistics or anything like that. You guys needed a fucking CommanderX for sure. Because like what you just said there, where you're like, oh, I feel like it's really solved. You know, I feel like London had solved our Torb stuff. It's like I feel like we ran through the stats for this previously, and it was like you guys still had like an overwhelmingly positive win rate versus London. You know?
Oh yeah,
like
yeah. At the start,
you say that no. I mean, even towards the end, like even in the very final scrims.
Yeah, I felt like it was specific. Numbani, we always destroyed your soldier on Numbani in scrims because he would always do like it was quite readable. But we felt like there were certain maps which we hadn't figured out. Like the big one, obviously, we spoke about on the podcast was like that New Queen Street. We felt that soldier is so good on New Queen Street that we didn't really shut it down. I actually have video files on my iPad now of every single soldier flank that Hydron did across every single map that we scrimmed. So if you guys played that comp, I was going to go show the players between, okay, Hydron does this first fight. So I still have all of your soldier flanks. So I think we definitely had like some form of read against it. But I agree with Max in terms of, I don't think we went into that with like confidence that we'd solved it. I felt like the matchup was close, but it was still 40-60. Ironically, I think I also said this in the past, was those two maps where you played your May Bastion comp and beat us in scrims, like dominated us. I also watched those back in the replay, and I was like, oh, we played so, like, we were so dumb in those that I was like, if they play this again and we don't just keep assuming that the TP won't get walled and run into people, like, oh, they can do that. If we just like use the TP to bait your wall and then just take a fight, then actually we have so many like advantages ourselves. So, because me and Max spoke about a lot, Max was like, yo, I think Toronto's going to play that Bastion comp everywhere. And I kept saying to him, I don't think they will. Like, they only play it for 2 maps. Like, I think they're crazy. I think they're going to play the Soldier. And obviously he was right. But I think that was really interesting because it's one of those, I felt the same when we beat Atlanta and we had Gator on. I think that actually those teams scrimming against each other, I feel like it's such a double-edged sword for both teams, you know? Like, it's really like who can just like steal the most, like, everything out of those scrims, whereas in a world which there was more teams like scrimming and we could have avoided each other, then actually we would have like I could see both those series going, like both Atlanta and Toronto going totally different if we didn't get as many scrims as we did.
Yeah, it's always a double-edged sword, right? But at that point, we were opposite sides of the bracket. I did have an inkling that you guys were gonna make it pretty far because you guys were the only team that was like playing a different cup, and you guys actually did the best in scrims against us. I think our like the scrim where we went Bastion went like really even. Up until that point, we always had an edge, but I felt like you guys had figured out the soldier stuff more and more. And like you said, perhaps on some maps, it is better to just play it because the soldier is so far away from the sim, but it's so readable. You know, like where he's gonna pop up, it's really readable. And I felt like, you know, you guys are obviously gonna look at New Quay Street and see where we're gonna go. So it was between.
I thought that map was just unwinnable. Like you couldn't theory your way through that map. Like there's just too many angles for your team to take.
Yeah, we felt that was in theory the toughest one out of all of them, out of all the map pool. I mean, obviously we would have had like if you picked New Queen Street and won, we would have had so much confidence to go to Gibraltar that we felt like if it like we felt any team that went map 5 or Gibraltar was just like a different. Obviously we spoke about before, like a different level. So we probably had confidence if we could get to map 5. But yeah, that was like from our perspective, we expected maybe more soldier stuff. And And yeah, I mean, it can really go either way. I think you're obviously right that like certain players on your team definitely had worse performances in that official than we'd seen in scrims. So even then, I think it's like harsh to judge it too badly, because Landon also, by the way, had like the best performance I've ever seen that guy have against you. Like that Busan, we lose that every single time if Landon doesn't quite literally do 4 times as much damage as UV, hit every single shot humanly possible, clutch out in every situation, So we had some. It was funny because I knew because the way the universe works, it's predictable. Once you know the universe, it's just obvious. Right?
There we go.
Not again.
And when we would scrim you guys whole season, I don't know how it was on your end, but a Toronto scrim was always such a fucking pain because no one made us tilt more than losing to Toronto because I think we just fucking hated you guys like to a degree. And I felt like those scrims were such like you'd look at the calendar and you'd have okay, nice day, nice off Toronto. If we lose map 1, then it's just like everyone's gonna like stop talking. There's gonna be like anxiety in the air. So I knew that our season was going to determine against the Toronto game. Like I was just so aware of it. It's just predictable, like once you figure it out, it's so obvious. And I think we had players on our team that were like, oh, I really hope we don't play Toronto. And one thing I always said was, you're right, we hate scrimming Toronto. We always beat Toronto. I think I'm something stupid like 12-1 against Toronto in my career. I think that like that version, like the core of that team that was on Atlanta that season, we kept upsetting them, right? Like I think that the AT guys hate playing against the British Hurricane guys as much as we hate playing against them. But for some reason, we always kind of win in the officials.
Except for that one British Hurricane versus AT showdown. But,
Once we got even first half of the season, we somehow won against Toronto.
Yeah, we were terrible. We still beat Toronto.
Unbelievable to us.
I think playing more of the rank comp might have been in your favor there, and the map pool I think was very you guys favored.
Yeah, such a good map pool.
Well, I mean, I think it in a way is fate. I think it's pretty funny. I think our guys actually liked kind of scrimming you guys because they knew you guys would get upset when they said stuff in chat. So we'd win a map and Coluge would be like, Spectre, you gotta type to them. Spectre, you gotta type to them. Like that. I think we would sweat a little bit harder in those scrims. And I think overall we took scrims really serious. Like we maybe like to our demise, we took scrims quite serious. And especially like in the second half. We'd be like, oh, every time we lose a map, we're gonna watch it as a team afterwards. And in that Alari BAP meta, we didn't lose a single scrim to Atlanta, Florida, like when those teams were scrimming too. We always beat them, right? And to be fair, that kind of messed up stats wise because they nerfed Alari, and as soon as they nerfed Alari, those teams also stopped scrimming that patch, right? So it was like we were on buffed Alari winning everything. They nerfed Alari and we didn't scrim like the top teams anymore. So that's kind of skewed in our way at that point. But you guys were actually our hardest scrim out of any scrim because we felt like we had that Lucio Bap Arissa comp down to such a science, how to beat it. And most of our reviews went into how to beat that comp because every team was playing it. We were really confident against that. And then Boston ran our shit.
How much prep time? How much prep time did you give the Rhine comp? Because I felt that it was a chronic issue for every team in the fucking league this year. That it was they would just write off London as the team where it's oh yeah, we're going to feel it out in the match and we'll play better than them in their shit, so it'll work. How much prep did you actually give to how are we going to beat London Spitfire other than day before match?
No,
would you finish a London scrim and you would consistently actually talk about how to beat Rhine over and over again?
Well, we reviewed a couple of the maps we struggled on against you guys, including Esperanza, which is a big reason why we picked it in the match. But we reviewed that map a lot of times because we struggled on that map in scrims against you guys one time, and then we just didn't lose it again afterwards, right? But definitely the maps we lost against you guys, we'd always review because you guys were one of the only scrims where we'd actually lose maps. So it wasn't just a write-off. We're not going to face that team. The problem was a little bit is we lost that Boston match, and that was really hard on the mental, because he went to last fight. It was an absolute dog fight. I couldn't get them to sit down and review if I wanted to, that day, because the emotions are so high. You're so frustrated, you're like one fight away. So I set them down like the day like after, and like an hour before we went into our warm-up scrim, I was like, this is the maps we're going to pick, this is the setup we're going to use, etc. Right? And I think in the match itself, we actually like had a lot of setups for Busan and how to play that map, and that went disastrous.
Your BAP needed a
might
bit of
say.
bonus feedback, Use gun.
Yeah, I needed use left click, not just right click. That would have been my bonus.
This one right here,
Yeah.
Benjamin. This one here.
Could you also show the shift button on your keyboard to tell Majed where to shift? Because I remember distinctly, we're like 90-0 up, right? And he's off angling from the point, and our whole team is playing top left on the drum. And you guys TP to the point to Majed, and he just stares at you like a deer in the
Just
headlights.
looking.
He doesn't shift away. He just
See how this
stares
one
at
pans
you.
out.
Yeah.
So I thought that was
Out of curiosity, did you feel like any of these players on your Toronto team, either in the first or second half of the year, I would love for you to burn some American Tornado players, just set them on fire, now that they're gone. But did you feel that any of them were uncoachable? Not to be confused with the name of this podcast, but yeah. Did you feel that any of them were just totally uncoachable or no?
No, I know all of them were coachable. Actually, like the one that I deemed like the least coachable is like Hydron, because he's very rigid and very set in his ways. But we actually sat down like once a week at least to do like a one-on-one session for like an hour, and he would implement like all of those things. There was a couple characters where he's like, I know how this character works, but like on the new characters like Bastion and Sombra, we'd sit down a lot, and like he would take like everything, So I actually felt like I said, like our team atmosphere was really, really good, almost too good. And no, they were really coachable. Maybe the least coachable player was like Speedily, just because he's like playing the game in a laissez-faire way, where he's I don't know if I even want to be here. I'm just doing this to be here with my friends. Like all of the American Tornado guys, their mentality was, I want to win for my team, right? I want to win for this teammate that I've played with for so long. And maybe that's why they put so much pressure on themselves. Maybe why it ended up being a double-edged sword. But most teams, it's like they'll be DMing their teammates or their opponents like mid-scrim, like this guy is so shit, But the American Tornado guys, they just say that to their face, They're like, you're so shit, And I think that actually like helps because they have like a level of trust with each other. But I don't know, maybe they got too comfortable, but I didn't feel like anybody was like uncoachable.
Yeah.
How did they? Go. I was gonna say, how did they react then when you do replace people on the roster? Was everyone on board at the time, or was there some initial tension that they'd waited all this time to get the gang back together, and it only lasted a few months before it had to get blown up again?
They were definitely like depressed because they didn't get depressed and frustrated because their coach made the decision to make changes. But I think at that point in the season, all of them saw that changes needed to be made, right? They just knew like we can't win with this roster. We gave it our best shot. Some people aren't carrying their weight. The meta might not fall in favor of them, but we can't wait until the meta is up. Some people aren't putting in the time and the effort. So I felt like they were sad and frustrated, but I also feel like they knew, it needed to happen, and you could instantly see like an improvement from there, because players are always sad when things they know are gone, right? Players they've played with for so long are gone, but then they see their new teammates and they can have fun with them, and they forget about it real quick, So I feel like they were really like frustrated from a personal standpoint, because it's like a dilemma. Do I want to play with my friends? But at the end of the day, they also know, they're being paid to win, and they're not on minimum salary. So we have to beat these minimum salary teams, or they're also getting cut, right? It's not worded that way, but that's essentially how the league is.
It's the reality of the situation.
It's the reality of the situation. And, I feel like it was tough, right? Like especially like the week after that when you're still during a break, right? And you've just cut the news to all the players, and everybody's cleaning out their apartments, right? It was tough, but I think budget concerns plus the team knowing there needs to be changes is they understood, right? At the core of it, they understood and they kept going. But in the start, like making roster changes is always tough.
I heard a story to segue. Okay, I heard a story on San Francisco Shock the season before this. And obviously now we can verify it. Some people say, "Oh, Chris, you shouldn't spread rumors if you don't know if it's true." But I say, just fucking get a life. If it damages someone's career, that's not my problem. I heard a rumor that when Sam was just joined Shock, and this was where I got my initial impression that these AT guys are just like totally uncoachable. Like these guys are just like it's too far. I had heard that he'd joined Shock, and it was like a month or two into the season, and he was getting one-on-one feedback with Crusty. And apparently the rumor was that Sam slammed the door, walked out the room and said, "This guy's a fucking idiot," and just I refuse to listen, and just like rage quit a Crusty coaching session. And that was what I heard, and I was like, oh my god, like okay, yeah, this is like these guys, like how the fuck do you get the ego to tell Crusty of all people? Because then Crusty's reputation was like pretty high, obviously.
Yeah.
Maybe right now, maybe Sam actually was just ahead of the curve. He saw Crusty's downfall.
He saw him for the fraud that he was.
Sam saw it firsthand. You think that was possible that it happened, or is it just misinformation that I'm spreading to tens of thousands of people that watch our podcast?
All right, so as with many rumor, there's a core of truth, but there was no like, oh, he slammed the door and he rage quit and he called him a fucking idiot. No, there was a point where Sam started getting a lot of coaching by Crusty, because Crusty does a lot of one-on-one coaching, and there was just a point where Sam was like, he's crushing my confidence so hard I can't learn from him anymore. He might have walked out on a session, but it was never like, this guy's a fucking idiot. He's a trash coach. There was a core of truth, right? Like Sam was getting a lot of coaching, and he didn't feel like he was getting better from it, and he was frustrated about it. But there was no like big explosion, like spectacle, like Nero and Striker incident from the season before.
There's a story to tell. There we go.
Come on, then tell us the Striker incident.
All right, so I think it's been long enough now where we can talk about it. But basically, what happened, right? We're on Numbani, and every time there's just this mirror of Ashe, Echo, like Mercy, and the Echo is supposed to mirror the enemy Echo on the right side coast because the Ashe can't contest it solo. Right, so Striker had told that to Nero like 6 times in scrims before. Like, I need you to hold right side so I can drop and go hold point and then hold main. Right, every time like Nero would like not do it, and then just one final straw, like Striker died, like left side, like not pocket, and he was like 1v freeing an Echo, Mercy, and an Ashe, and he slammed the desk, stood up, and like just started like standing over Nero, like trying to intimidate him. And he's like, "You're gonna fucking hold right side." And Nero just starts laughing at him, and that like set the fuse in Striker so hard. Like Nero was like, "You're pathetic. Are you getting so mad over a game, bro? Like you know how the Americans are." And Striker was getting that mad over a game. So like he was like. Eventually, like, Nero stepped back, and Striker stepped back, and then Nero said something like Ashe. Striker walked away, and Striker got so mad, he was, like, about to punch Nero, and just before then, like, the coaches jumped in. So there wasn't, like, an actual punch, but he was, like, so pissed, and I think Johnny, our manager, took, like, a hit in the stray, but, we took Striker and Nero out of the room, and we sent Striker home. And that was that. But yeah, no, there's definitely like some tension there between like Nero's laissez-faire attitude, like live and let live, and Striker's like, I want to win so fucking bad, like what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I feel like I'd rather have Striker on the team than Nero, just from that story. And like, I guess, hearing like a player that's like so fucking lax about like not giving a shit, like if you're in the Overwatch League and you're on one of these teams that like they really they know that they have the capacity to potentially win the Overwatch League. They really want to win, and you've got this guy just being like, "You're getting this mad over a video game?" It's like, it's like, yeah, strangle the cunt to death. I'm gonna kill you. You know, it's fucking like these guys are so fucking passionate. You know, like Striker is, mental illness aside, the guy is a fucking winner, right?
No, he's really passionate.
He's got that fucking dog in him, even if he's a bit dog shit nowadays. But what has Nero ever won, bro? What has Nero ever won? So imagine you're this super passionate guy that wants it so fucking bad, and this guy's just not listening to what you're saying over and over again, and then he's just laughing in your face afterwards, fuck.
I definitely feel where he's coming from. And credit to Striker, right? The year after that, he came back on the patented Crusty Get Striker Back SOS call, and he was one of the best teammates I've had that point, because I think season 4 Striker was pretty toxic because he felt like he was the best player on the team and he was running that team, along with Violet. And then season 5 Striker, he was shit on Boston, and this was his last chance. Before the last chance, but in his eyes, that was the last chance. And he was playing with proper, so he was okay, I'm not the best player on this team right now. So he actually put his tail between his legs and actually listened and actually really helped the team. And then the Reaper meta came and we kind of lucked out with that, giving him the only character he can play, with his calling being really good. His Tracer is one of the best of all time, right? But at that point, we all knew he was kind of washed. But Reaper is a character you could be washed on, but still lead the team, and let things come to you. So we lucked out with that. But it was an ingenious signing, looking back. And this year it didn't work out for them. But an ingenious signing in season 5.
You have to respect him for trying it on, though.
Yeah. I was going to ask, can you justify how people keep signing him? Because obviously I'm not one of the 2 people that sign him every season, but he does get signed every season. And it seems like he has some sort of toxic episode and then gets kicked, and then someone tries again. But there must be some sort of actual quality to Striker which makes Crusty call him back every single season after things have gone wrong.
Especially these later ones, right? Because it's not just a talent thing. You could make the argument earlier on, oh, he's just so good, we have to get him in. But even when his skill has dropped off, they keep bringing him back.
Yeah, no, his frustration to win is the double-edged sword, right? Because he's the one person that will go to his teammates and be let's look at this fight together. Let's look at that fight together. And he really almost coaches the team in a way where he's trying to help everybody. He's you need to play there. You need to play there. We need to do this. And he calls that in game, right? He's the one person that says this fight, we're going to play fast. This fight, we're going to play slow, push, back. So in those push and back metas, he's actually really, really good, right? The problem is when you've got a player like that, who you don't view as good, telling you what to do, is you get really frustrated, right? But I felt especially in season 5, he brought a lot of intangibles. He motivated the team again, and he vaudevilled a lot until a week before playoffs when he started playing Rust with the rest of the team.
It's a great game.
All our Koreans 3 weeks before playoffs played a week of Rust. And then me and Crusty had a talk, and I was we have to IP ban Rust. This can't go. We have to IP ban Rust. So we banned Rust from the team house. And people started playing Overwatch again because they were oh, playoffs is coming close, right? We're 2 weeks out now from playoffs. We have to start grinding again. But we actually had to ban Rust. It was pretty funny. But I coming back to the Striker situation. Yeah, I do feel on push comps, right, and especially with Reaper, he brought such a level of leadership. It's it's no surprise that when he was good, he won 2 championships, and obviously on the season 3, team 2, he had so much impact on his Hanzo because he knows how to win the game so well and what space to hold. It's just that when you hold those spaces, you need to actually win your duels, which he didn't do in the later seasons anymore. But his understanding of the game and how to play it was actually at a really high level, and his frustration to win was his double-edged sword. But I think that's why Crusty loves him, because Crusty also wins to win so bad, where he'll scream at players and get angry, right? I think Him and Striker have that in common, and they obviously go way back. Why Boston brings him back, I don't know. But Crusty brings him back because they have such a similar style, and he's like really shit in scrims, and then he's somehow clutch in matches.
Yeah, one of those. So many of these players I hear about more and more.
I mean, I feel like that's a quality where I don't know how much you've worked with players like that, Chris. I mean, I'm sure you have over the course of your career, but it's like it's really players where it's like you've just got to describe them as winners, you know? Like there's just like a certain a set of intangibles about them as a player, and it's like it's the way that they step up when the team is shit. It's the way that they step up during matches. It's the shit that they say when you're absolutely going to lose and everyone is too stupid to solve it, and they just come out with something. Like I remember Reiner's like the winner, you know. Like I shit on Reiner a lot sometimes, you know, when you put him on Junker Queen and he's ulting off the map or something, and he's got arms posted up at the back. But like Reiner was a true winner, you know. Like I remember in one of our very early season matches on Gladiators, we were playing Dallas Fuel, and it was Gibraltar, Winston Mirror, Dallas Fuel, and it's like we didn't think that Reiner was like this exceptional Winston or anything, right? But we both full push the map, and as we're loading in on the attack, he starts talking about how like Sparkle was just playing on the ground way too much, and it's going to be really, really easy to take top of them because their Tracer in the previous round on the defense, he was just griefing, holding cart way too much, and never impacting the top fight at all, you know? And I feel like most players, they're there in that like, you know, map 5 situation. Both teams have full pushed the map. They're not thinking about the first time that they attack the point and then coming out with something that is actually coherent and then proceeds to win us the series immediately after, you know? Like this was someone that in the match setting, like he really saw it, you know? He proceeded to grief on Winston over and over again, but Arns was there to fucking just take over on Widow. But I think the point still stands with Reiner that it's like he was just one of those sorts of players where it's like they're real winners, you know? Like they see the game at a super high level and they will say the shit that matters when it actually counts. Like they're not just going to be a passenger on the team.
Yeah.
Coluge.
That's
Whoa.
That's him.
There's been times where Coluge has led the teams to win. Like for example, in that NYXL game in stage 1.
Shit, versus NYXL.
We were 2-2.
NYXL.
We were 2-2, right? And we go into map 3, and he like
that's a winner. That's a fucking winner.
Just
right
absolutely shits on the team and then builds them back up. You know, he's like, why the fuck are we choking like this? I'm gonna play Queen. You're gonna play that. You're gonna play that, and we're gonna win. But I do think like in those heavy tournament situations, like the play-ins, the playoffs, right? A player like Reiner, Super, Smurf, like players like that who still see the game like real time, and like know what to say to the team and almost lead them to victory. Just trust in me and we can win, guys. Like that. I think that is invaluable, and it lifts the team up so much where every person looks better.
Then I guess there's people on the shock that I want to ask about. You were there for season 3, 4, 5, right?
Yeah, I was there toward the end of season 3.
Was it like just later in the season 3?
Yeah, it was like I was unofficial like 3 weeks before the playoffs. But then in the playoffs we did well, right? And especially in that summer Reaper meta against Philly, I had setups for like each of like Jesus TPs, and I helped Ants a lot on how to play the Sombra matchup. And it was just Sombra 76, right? But it is like you need to take that off and you need to take that off angle. We need to push him back like that. So I started helping like a couple weeks before the playoffs, but that time it was like pretty long before like the end of the season to the play-ins to the playoffs. It was like a couple weeks like in between each. Like it was pretty.
Did they fly you out for? Did they fly you to Korea for the playoffs, or did you stay remote?
No, I stay remote because we felt like it was 2-week quarantine, right? Like they would have flown me out, but it was like the stupid 2-week quarantine. So we were like talking about it, and they were like, "Yeah, we could fly you out, but we feel like you'd be able to do much more from home, right? Where you've already got your setup. You don't need to use some crappy laptop from a hotel room." It was like a really shit setup back then, from what I heard. Like especially for coaches, players like had an okay setup, but especially for coaches, it was really crap.
Yeah.
So I worked from home, and that actually helped us a lot because I was able to work when they were sleeping, and then they would wake up and they'd have like a document, you know, to like show the team, and like clips and examples and setups, and like before the matches I do the same, where it'd be like, this is what they're gonna do, how they're gonna play it. We've been doing this in Scrim, so let's make that one small adaptation. And that's all they had to show, you know? So it was like real analyst work back then. But yeah, that was season 3. And it was really interesting because we only won control and hybrid maps. And we lost every 2CP and every escort map that year. And because control was 2 times in a series, we actually went to map 5 with each team we played. It was like, but our team was so clutch in map 5, it didn't even matter, right? Like Striker, like for all the shit he's been given, is one of the clutchest players, like in those map 5s. And like Super 2, like he, like, you know, Max says, like when it comes down to it, Super will make that call to push, you know, especially on the hog. I remember he had some clutch hooks.
Yeah, fuck Roadhog. That's all I've got to say. All I got to say about it.
Where was Poco in that playoffs run, mate? Like, that's what I want to know.
In quarantine.
He was there for the last map of our season before we lost, so he played one.
That's actually so kind of KDG to throw.
It was
Poco
good of him.
for
Just like, oh, I'll give you a playoff map, you know.
It's like, I forgot I had an
season,
off-take
will
player
ya?
for the double off-take meta. Like, could you just step it up now, Poke? Like, come on.
I feel like the season 3 shock, the season 3 Philly gap wasn't even as much like tank or DPS. It was actually like funny. Astra would die randomly every second fight, and Muff would never die. He would absolutely never die on Mercy and always get his res off, you know? Like I felt like there was such a big gap between Muff's Mercy and all these like main support, main Lucio Mercies like Lee J Gone and like Funny Astro. That was like our biggest boon over most of these teams.
Yeah, we felt like we could have had you in. Like we felt it was really close for the majority of the season up until that last meta. Like if it was like Sombra Reaper meta, we really felt like we could have. If it continued to be that meta, we really felt like we could have won it all. And even other metas that we had throughout that season, we were good at, just not the Roadhog one, very much. That season was so Mickey Mouse though. No, like every weekend you met a hero bans. Like I feel like there's been no season where there's been more metas than that season. There was like must have been like 20 weeks of competition and then 20 weeks of metas. You know, like it was always something fucking different compared to what we've had like recently, where it's like 1 or 2 per season.
Yeah, no, I feel like especially the playoffs is like, I don't know why. It's always like the playoffs, there has to be like a big meta swap. And I don't mind it, right? I kind of like it because it like tests your ability to adapt, and it doesn't like just let you make roster changes for the sake of going into playoffs. Cuff picking up who are you for playoffs. You know, like stuff like that. I think
Decay, that's what they did in season 3. Remember
oh,
Washington?
right.
Like
Yeah,
absolutely fucking cheated every single rule humanly possible to sign DK and almost took the worst team in the league to fucking playoffs.
Yeah, we went to map 5 with them. We actually had to knock them out of the winners bracket, but they were really fucking good. That meta with the Hog. They were like ahead too because they were playing the Hog, not the Hog Sigma, but they were playing the Hog before anybody else was.
Yeah, it was like that Hog Zaya stuff. It was really annoying. Yeah. I wanted to ask you then, so maybe we on this coaching panel, I feel like our opinions of Crusty have maybe gone like downhill over time, right? Like I think there was a time where he was undisputed, like the single best coach in the world season 2 and 3. I think maybe we looked at some of the decisions that we saw like towards the end, and we think like, oh, maybe some of the like Rush or the Gunba coaches have maybe jumped over him. Do you think, yes or no, that Crusty is the GOAT?
I think, like, over the course of the whole Overwatch League, yes, he's definitely the GOAT, right? Like, reputation-wise. I think there's a big difference between Crusty and, like, your traditional, like, Rush or Gunba coach who coach more based on, like, the team, like, rotations and how they play. Crusty is very individual-focused. He'll be like, I think, you're not playing well in this meta, so this is what you need to do. And he'll like watch with them for like an hour, and just coach them on like how they need to play, where they need to be, what their win condition is. And like, this is your job. This is what you should do. I think Crusty works best when he's like with an assistant coach who like does the big macro for him, right? Because I think player management and like helping like his players improve, given that they can mentally handle it, because he is quite harsh. He is like the best coach, right? Like, but he doesn't filter things, right? So some players struggle with that a lot, right? Like look at this season. I think probably Finn and Vindimes, like they started out like okay-ish, and then throughout the season they just look more and more shit like every week, probably because of that, right? But it also helped a lot like before that, right? When he shits on Violet, when he shits on Violet Lucio how to play. He helps DPS players a lot, so he would help Kilo, and Kilo would somehow be able to handle both Proper screaming at him and Crusty screaming at him in Season 5. Like, Kilo really was our catalyst in Season 5. Every single player would shit on him. Like, there was like Violet, Proper, Finn, and Crusty, like, all shitting on Kilo. And, like, I remember there was a point in time where Kilo was playing a rank game, and like Violet sat behind him, Proper sat behind him, and Crusty sat behind him. And they were just raw dogging this poor kid about, you have to go there, you have to do that. Why the fuck you die? Why the fuck you die? They were like screaming at him in Korean, like mid-rank game. And like, you know, like Kilo really was the catalyst of what made Shock Season 5 what it was, because that guy took so much shit and still played okay-ish. You know, I don't think a lot of players could have handled that. But no, I do think Crusty one-on-one coaching very, very strong, because he knows the win conditions really well. And this is one thing that's weird, is like when he watches a scrim, he always watches through POV. He never watches overhead.
Yeah.
He always watches POV. So like he's basically just like a one-on-one coach, and he like makes every decision, right? What map we pick and what player we put in. So I think undisputably he's the GOAT, but he does coach a lot different than other coaches, and he does need an assistant coach to supplement him, which is why I think 9K helped like a lot coming in. And then in Season 4, I did a lot of like the macro coaching.
I think you were like a little, you know, I think grouping up Rush and Gunba in the same sentence is
Okay.
major disrespect to Gunba, because you know when I hear about Rush, you know, I do hear of someone who's more of like a team dad coach than anything else. And let me tell you, you do not want to be Gumba's son. You know, like that guy's not being hired to be the team dad for sure. Like that guy is that man is a strong leader. We'll put it that way, you know? Like, we're definitely leaning towards, like, the fascist end of the political spectrum when we're talking about how Gunba leads a team. But I think there's, like, low-key, high-key, a case for Gunba being, like, greatest coach of all time in Overwatch. Like, low-key. Just, I know, you know, like, Crusty has the results under his belt, right? But Gunba actually has the results, like, all the fucking time. Like every single team that Gunba has ever been on, like if you compare his budget bracket to his results, it's actually fucking insane. Like the whole way through the Overwatch League. Like I got his Wikipedia up. It's like at the start he was on LA Valiant Season 1. That was a fucking good team. Then he's on fucking Boston Uprising again. Insane consistent like over performances, like lots of reverse sweeps coming from the team. Like they had a fucking dog roster that he didn't have a hand in building because Huck entered them, and they keep like reverse sweeping. Like they keep getting footage of like him in the dugout 0-2 down, and they fucking turning around these series. Then he's on Valiant again, and like that team, like he scouts an insane roster, fucking again, like crazy upsets all throughout. And then you put him on Florida, you give him 2 years and just a little bit of money, and he's won the Overwatch League. You know, with someone like Crusty, it's like he's had resources start to finish, right? Like he basically got Striker on Boston, and then afterwards it's just shock forever, like a high resource team from start to finish, right? But I think someone like Gunba,
I fully agree. I think that like the only like I think Gunba like just like if you think about like I always feel like when people talk about in football who's the greatest of all time, I just feel like greatest and best are slightly different. Like greatest is like the most achievements over a period, whereas best is just like when you were at your peak. But I agree. I think Gunba is clearly, if not the greatest, at least the best coach, you know? Like, actually, if I was to pick a coach to coach a team for a year, it would be Gunba, you know? I feel like you can see the difference he makes to a team and coach. You see decisions he makes. You can see the team always looks well coached. The obvious, we'll get Gunba on hopefully in like the next like few weeks if he'll bless us with his presence, we can get him on. But I always feel like the question mark for Gunba is like his coaching style is extremely fascistic, as you said.
Everyone fucking hates him.
Yeah, I don't see how he can like maintain a roster for more than a year without everybody. Like, you think about how harsh Crusty is or whatever, and when he just like turns like some of these Korean coaches where their players just want to like, kill themselves. But I feel like Gunba is like that on like steroids. Like, I feel like Gunba is like so unbelievably brutal to players, but in my opinion, clearly understands Overwatch better than anyone else on planet Earth. Probably. So no, yeah, I agree. I just depends. Do you count like player relations as a package of coaching, or do you think even regardless, it's just like, because he has bounced from team to team. Even this Florida season, he ended up having to boot most of them and like sign different ones.
Well, these teams, they try to usurp him mid-season, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure not this season, but the season before, all of the AT players got together and they were like, it's us or him. Something like that, you know, like they try to, his rosters try to kick him off the teams mid-season because they
wasn't it only Hydron from AT on the Florida
definitely.
roster?
Well, it was. What I heard this at least in this off season was that numerous players that were removed from that team said, "I won't play for Gunba again." I think the thing is, Gunba will tell us this. Like, the thing is, I don't think we're even spreading information that Gunba gives a fuck.
Oh no, he'll be straight out with it, mate. Like,
yeah, he's like, these guys fucking hated me. And when I was talking to Albert, he was in playoffs. He was like, "Yeah, we figured out we need to get a certain type of player to work under Gunba, and if we do, then we can win the league like they did. But if you get like what Albert said to me is, if Gunba coached Boston, the team like Striker would have been throwing punches at everyone like on a fucking like, a daily basis, you know." Like, I don't know who would you have in a fight, Striker versus Gunba? Surely Gunba would dismantle him, right? It wouldn't be.
I think Gumba's pretty tall, right? So
yeah,
I think I'd have Gumba.
Yeah,
packs a big punch.
Striker would have had a few black eyes.
I think that's why Florida worked though, because the whole system is built to accommodate how Gunba is. So if you build the system around Gunba, he'll just get results.
Yeah.
But
he builds
you
the
couldn't,
system, you know.
well, yeah, but like Albert, for example, when all the players say this Gunba guy might be a bit of a cunt, are we sure we want him around? Albert says, "Fuck yeah, we do. If you're on board, you're out," you know? And that, like, there needs to be that kind of level. And I don't know if that's maybe the sort of thing that goes away with less and less org support as well, you know? Like, the power shifts a bit more towards the players.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, I think especially one thing that I always wonder with Gunba too is, like, does he tolerate shit players, you know? Like, he's going to be coaching SR Peak Check right now. And presumably, the level of gameplay he's going to be looking at isn't quite what he's used to on Florida, I imagine. Even Vestola in his prime isn't doing, like, someone things on Winston and stuff. So I wonder if, like, is he just still, like, abusing everyone for being shit? Or, like, I've spoken to him about it a little bit, and he's like, yeah, I just need he feels like, and again, I think he'll say this, he feels that he needs an org to trust him and then let him just do what the fuck he wants to players, like treat them like fucking pieces of shit. If it's like one of these situations where the players pick the coach, he thinks he'll actually have a pretty difficult time because no player is going to say, "Oh, please bring me Gunba," you know?
Yeah. I think it's also really good. Like, Gunba often works with McGravy. Like, Gunba went and worked with Falcons for the Saudi E-Leagues, but unfortunately, the Saudi players slept through and made them not qualify. But McGravy was also there with Falcons. You know, like, those two are pretty much. It seems like they're
it's the same on Peak Check, right? He's there.
Is Graver there?
Is he?
I think McGravy's there as well, right? He's listed on the roster. I'm pretty sure. Him and Face actually of all people.
Face is in there, is he?
He's listed on the roster. I don't know if I buy it, but he's listed on the roster.
Class. All right, we'll have to look into that. But yeah, like, I think McGravy is like the perfect foil to Gunba, you know? Like, you've got the strictest, cuntiest man of all time. Like, not cunty in like a serving way, but he's just a prick to you. Yeah. So he really, like, he's super strict and aggressive. And then you've got McGravy, who's just like the nicest guy on planet Earth, you know, like really, really good with all sorts of player relations and diffusing situations and making people feel heard and stuff like that. So I think that those two together, it's a really good dynamic between the two of them, because you've got the guy that will whip everyone into shape and then whip all the skin off their backs and then whip until you can see the bones. And then you've got the guy that will like put a nice little band-aid on it with some rainbows and make everything feel a little better. So I think it's a good dynamic they have there.
No, I also think one thing you can credit Gunba to is like his scouting is really good, right? I think he scouted someone and then he offered quartz like last season, and now, you know, offering quartz isn't a big deal, but back then, you know, that was a really good shout. I think, you know, when it comes to like making budget rosters and elevating your roster past its current level, I think he's done a really good job. For example, like the year before, everybody was so high on Majed, and then he put Majed on the bench for RuPaul, and then they like just did astronomically better, right? Like this is really smart decisions. So I think
the RuPaul one was actually a crazy signing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't think
everyone was shitting on him for it.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting him to do. He just felt like a decent American bat player. That's all he felt like, and then all of a sudden he becomes probably maybe the best Western flex support, or at least very much in the question.
Yeah, I agree. I think that his coaching is really good, but his talent scout, like I feel like as a coach, as evidenced by my ability to sign players, I'm such a fucking terrible judge of talent. Like I literally can't do it. I can't watch someone play Overwatch and tell you if they're good or bad, but I can tell you how a team should play Overwatch versus another team, you know? Whereas I feel like Gunba has like the whole package where he can clearly, I mean, he was telling me, what was the flex support they signed at the end called? Maka, is it?
Maka?
Yeah.
That
guy's going to be fucking punk.
You know it.
Yeah, he was saying, he thinks this guy's actually insane, like maybe already better than RuPaul, like this guy next season Overwatch League, which he didn't see that coming, did he? But like, he was like, yeah, this kid's actually fucking insane. And when Gunba tells me that there's this new insane kid, I'm like, yeah, he's right. Like, I
believe him. You just believe him.
I believe you unconditionally.
He's not wrong about these things. I don't know if maybe you can answer this, Casores, but obviously Shock is a team that over the years have signed an interesting selection of players. Lots of players that you maybe wouldn't expect to see on the roster, from people like Tayo, even maybe people like Mikey and Coluge aren't maybe the names you'd think when Shock are building these star rosters. But who is it? Is it Crusty who's always picking out these, like, I guess, more obscure players and trying to work them in or bring someone in mid-season?
Yeah, I'd say it's mostly Crusty, but we always have discussions about it and I'll like bring up people, right? So in the last season, season 5, we were gonna have Super, and then he backed out last second and kind of fucked us. So what basically happened is, you know, we have to look for a new tank. We can't get a visa anymore. Impossible. We were like literally like a month out from the season, right? Like it was like really close. We had already played scrims with Super, and then we were like, so we have to get somebody American. So there's basically Coluge and nobody. Right? Because it was literally like that. And Coluge had been canceled before. So first we need to go to the league and be like, you know, he'd been canceled back then. Is he good now? And they were like, yeah, it's fine. And we kind of expected backlash, but actually it was really well received. But it's usually Crusty saying like we should sign this player because our roster is not good enough and we can't win as is. Right? Like after stage 3 and when we were struggling with Sombra Tracer last year, is basically Crusty saying we can never win Sombra Tracer with our current roster, so we need to sign Striker, right? Like, so we need to sign somebody else, and then we started looking at candidates, and it was like, okay, we should sign Striker, right? So it is like Crusty scouting and the rest of the coaches suggesting, and then special shout out to 9K, who is like an insane tank coach. So Crusty is also like, oh, I trust 9K for the tanks, right? Or I trust Casores for supports. So it was like suggestions, but especially DPS players, he would scout. Yeah.
Then we can do this discussion now then. Why does Crusty love mixed rosters so much? Because he genuinely, and I don't know if you feel the same, he believes they're better than like full, not nation, like full regional rosters. Why?
I think it really comes down to like the philosophy from both sides, and there's a lot of nuances to this, right? But I think the essence comes down to it. Like Western players are fun, and Korean players try hard, and Korean players very often are quite miserable because all they've done since 12 years old is play the game in like a PC cafe or at home, right? I think a lot of Western players have gone through like being bullied in school and also like being on a traditional sports, right? Both Coluge, Hydron, for example, have been in traditional sports, and they've done that from a young age, so they kind of know how culture works. I think the essence of it is just Crusty makes it work because he's bilingual, right? He speaks both fluent English and Korean, so there isn't a divide between Korean players that go to their Korean coach and Western players that go to their Western coach and ask questions to those two, right? Everybody like goes to Crusty and Crusty answers because he can answer in both languages. When it comes to like the scouting aspect of it, it's just not like putting yourself in like one region, right? Like especially like a lot of these signings are just we can't sign a Korean, so let's get the Westerner because they don't take time to get a visa. Let's integrate them fast. But especially season 2, I can't speak for obviously, but season 3 and season 4, it's just we have these really insane like Western pieces. Let's supplement them with really insane Korean pieces and make it work. Let's just get all the talent. We have Super, and he who should not be named, but is named every week on this podcast for whatever reason.
Let's freak
we have Super and Sinatra, right? They're like the best Western players, and they know how to call and lead. Let's supplement them with really insane like Koreans. We already have Striker. Let's sign Violet. Let's sign Choyobin, right? And just making good signings from both sides and making it like an equal equation. I'd say in season 5, it was like really based around Super. Like we built the roster based around Super because we let Smurf go. Obviously, both Super and Smurf cost a lot of money. So we let Surf go, and we were like, we're going to build this roster around Super, and he's going to be our solo tank. So we were like, if we get Super, and we were instantly like, oh, Violet is going to talk to the O2 guys because Proper's really insane, and the O2 guys in general are really, really good and up-and-coming talent. They've won contender so many times now. So it's like not like secret signing. Like everybody knew Proper was good. He just wanted to like be on the best team, and Shock had been the best team up until that point, right? So you get Super as like your core piece, and I think this is essential, right? If you want to make a good mixed roster, like I said earlier, you need good Westerns and you need good Koreans. You can't be like Washington where your Koreans are good and your Westerns are noticeably worse, right?
Yeah.
And then because of both 9K and Crusty being completely bilingual, what we do is we'd have Crusty or 9K coach like on the whiteboard or like on the screen in English, and we would always do it in English just because the spoken language in the game was English, and then 9K or Crusty would be in the back with the Korean players translating in real time, so they could ask questions in real time. In Korean, they would ask, and then Crusty would answer in English, right? Like it worked like in such a flow where because of those bilingual coaches, it like worked out so well. And this has been a big motivator for me to learn Korean too, because the mixed rosters that I've seen work out are the ones where you have bilingual coaches that can hear both sides. The mixed roster that don't work out are the ones that have a Korean coach and a Western coach, and there's a language barrier. I think Shock has worked so well because they're able to transcend the language barrier through Crusty.
So basically, Crusty is worth all that money because he's actually got insane bilingual skill.
Yeah, he's a good coach, and he's bilingual.
And almost every coach doesn't have that level of bilingual skill. Maybe Junkbuck.
Yeah, Junkbuck,
Yeah.
Big Shout, and then 9K Crusty.
Yeah.
And then there's probably a couple of other coaches who can speak both English and Korean. But like you said, Max, like with Smash in the last episode, right? It was tough because he took so long to form sentences. It just got boring because his English is not as good. That's not a slight
it's,
smash.
The reviews are like genuinely like more attentionally demanding when someone is speaking, like, you know, with like a difficulty multiplier on, basically, you know, like it's harder for everyone to pay attention. I'm curious, you know, you talked a lot about like really high level Western talent, culture pickup, stuff like that. What the fuck was the thinking? Like, I know you weren't on the team, so, you know, we might have to ask a shock member, but you got any insight as to Krusty's crackers for this year? Like Luke, Minnow, and Renko? Like those are the pickups? Because I feel like you're not really hitting anything there. You're not picking up for culture. You're not picking up for talent. You're just picking up two really mid-white guys, you know? Like,
I got some juice for you on that. No, it's pretty interesting because, like, I think toward the middle of the season, Shock was like convinced their support line is just dog shit, and then, you know, Finn might stay, but Vindime is the problem. So I think they'd already committed to like not keeping Vindime toward the middle of the season, and, you know, they were really trying to go hard on Vega. So what actually happened is Toronto and Shock offered almost a bidding war for Vega, and then. Because we went to the okay. Here's what I'm mad about, right? We went to the league and we said, "Can we sign this kid?" And they said yes, right? They said verbatim, "Yes, you can sign him." So we offer him. Shock is offering him. He's still deciding where to go. Another league team complains about the rules and not being able to sign Vega.
Guaranteed.
Maybe that's
Florida.
fair.
it would be Albert for sure, dude.
I don't know what
100% Albert. Yeah. It's always him.
But they heard we're trying to sign Vega, and they rule booked the league, and they're like, they can't sign him. So the league calls us up, and they're like, you can't sign him. You've already made offers to him. You know, the kid's already told his mom about that he's gonna be signed, and that he's still deciding, and who's he gonna go
he's
to?
Already dropped
Shock
out
or
uni.
Toronto, right? And then I have to call the kid up, and I'm like, yeah, we have to rescind our offer. The league is not letting it go, and Shock's probably gonna do the same thing. So sucks for you, kid, but hang up. Nah, but basically, I think they were like convinced they were gonna sign Vega, and they were convinced that Vindime was just not the fit for their team, so they decided to go with another white boy because, you know, for whatever reason.
Well, I feel like at that stage, what was like, I remember when the Luke Mia to Shock rumors happened, I was going around the London house saying, you guys are so fucking stupid for believing this rumor. Like, just think for 1 second about Luke Mino going to Shock. It's clearly not happening, guys. But I guess it just genuinely, like, what was their alternatives? Like, Vega would have been really fucking solid for them, right? Like, he's really, really good. But after that, if you're gonna kick your supports, and you, like Cass mentioned, you can't get a Korean visa really in mid-season. It's so difficult because you're going to play at least 2/3 of the rest of the stage before it comes in. Maybe you get it for playoffs, but I don't know, what's your alternative? It has to be North American.
I mean, I think it's some Gladiators juice. They could have got Lastro, and that would have been way better for them, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, we were feeling around there, like, a while before Dante got cut, you know, because like the Dante resentment was like a long process, and it was like we knew they were struggling with supports, and we weren't like particularly happy with Lastro. We were kind of like, oh, you know, maybe we can just go all in on Bubble here, but we were really like against our tank, you know. We were like, we must kill Dante no matter what, right? So we were like, can we have Junebin? We'll give you Lastro, something like that, you know, like we'll trade Lastro for Junebin. But they were completely unwilling to give up Junebin, like completely unwilling. And I don't know if them going all in on Max would have been like, you know, equally as fucked, but you know, it seemed like by the end of the season all their tanks sucked.
I mean, the decisions they made around the tanks was so fucking stupid, right?
What's June been doing on Diva and Max on Winston, Crusty?
They spent the first half of the season only playing each other's heroes, presumably in some sort of way to make them. But if you've got two tanks, use fucking two tanks. If you only had one tank, if you only had Coluge, why are you playing on Winston? Well, what's the alternative? What do you want me to do? You know, like you need Winston in some maps. But for them, it's like, we have the option to play our Diva player on Diva and a Winston player on Winston, but we'll keep you fucking guessing until both players mentally collapse, presumably, and then we had no tanks.
Yeah. Now we got to get fucking 9K or Crusty on for this, actually, because like there's just way too many unanswered questions on this year's Shock.
I'll talk to him.
Put in a good word. Say we're no longer racist, so we're
accepted. We're accepted by Saudi Arabia, so anybody can come on our show now.
True.
Speaking of Saudi Arabia, Unter here screwed me out of like joining Twisted Mind this year. They were like dangling because of course I'm contracted with Toronto, right? But the off season's slow. I'm like, I need to go make some connections in Saudi.
This guy,
I need to go talk to Quartz so I can get him on my team next year. So I was like,
you're trying to pin Unter as the bad guy here, but you're sitting here on a cushy salary.
He wants 2 jobs when we've got 0.
And you're like, oh fuck it, I'll take another job. Why not? I can have
these Dutch guys coming in, taking our jobs
in Saudi Arabia. What's that, dude? Come on. Tell you what, I'll take your job, and then you can do anything else. You want to be on the broadcast for Saudi? You can do that. I'll be the Toronto head coach. No, unbelievable.
We'll play rock paper scissors for it.
Yeah.
Well, didn't they spoke to you first, right? So is it not kind of your fault for not just signing with Twisted Minds as soon as that extra money was on the table?
No, they were like, they spoke to Unter and he had a team, right? And then they spoke to me after that, and they were literally like, we've got your flight ready, send in your details, here's your salary, this and that. And then Unter like leaves the team or gets, I don't know what happened with your other team, Unter. And then they're like, oh, fuck you. It's so funny.
Yeah. It was actually like an 11th hour swoop in, you know, like I remember coming back to Twisted Minds like a week after they'd given me the offer and me being like, oh, unfortunately I can't accept it, you know. And I just remember like diving back into the DMs of the guy that messaged me being like, hey, I'm actually available by the way. And he's like, okay, we'll see what we can do. And I'm like, I was so worried that you had already signed because I knew they were going to go and talk to you. Like I knew they'd spoken with you, and I was freaking out thinking like, oh, Casores is probably already on. And then as it turns out, none of that mattered. And they were like, yeah, all right, come to Saudi, mate. Like, you're sorted.
No, a big reason for that was I came back from Toronto on like the 15th. So I would have like missed the initial scrims. So I think in the end, you know, not having the stress and not having to fly out to Saudi does work out, you know. Now I'm all set up. I've got a good routine going here in the Netherlands. I wake up at 7 a.m. every day, unheard of in gamer terms. And we're doing this podcast early, so our Australian and our Korean joiners can enjoy their time as well in the evening.
I appreciate it.
This is your whole work day, isn't it? Given you're doing Toronto's off season for a league that doesn't exist, you know, like this is pretty much your 9 to 5. This 2-hour podcast.
Yeah, I've got a private coaching session tonight. Then I've got to coach my Flash Ops team to earn even just the tiniest smidgen of money. Oh, you got to wake up at 8 a.m. Fucking typical Casores, dude.
Wake up at 8 a.m., do a podcast, go to the gym, maybe speak to some players about how their off season's going and what they want to
do. Fuck, dude.
What a life.
It's all right for some, isn't it? We won't be seeing a Casores podcast being booted up anytime soon. Fuck.
No.
We might see the Casores stream booting up soon.
GeoGuessr back on the menu, or are we looking at broader?
I might have to look at some games because I can't play Overwatch anymore. Every time I play, my shoulder hurts like crazy. It's like the old man. I hit the gym too much, got an injury, and now, you know, whenever I flick the mouse on Tracer, there's like a stinging pain. So I can only play Sigma when I play because then you have to like look around very slowly.
You got no sports scientists over at the Toronto Defiant?
No, we do actually have a performance team.
Of course
and
they do. It's Toronto.
But they didn't help you with your shoulder pain. They couldn't get you back in gaming form.
We're on a what's it called, revalidation, like a trajectory now. So I'm doing like stretches, exercises for it. Hopefully in 2 or 3 months it'll be good again.
quick plug, but like on Gladiators, they were partnered with 1HP, and they were like the best fucking sports like physio people ever, dude. Like I absolutely milked Gladiators for every cent they were worth while I was working there. Like I came into that shit and it was like I had a sore back, I had a sore shoulder, I was just everything under the sun sucked about me. You know, the guy gives me an initial consult and he's like, "You've got the flexibility of a 50-year-old man. Like there's something wrong with you, man." But those were just the best fucking exercise scientists ever. You know, like they were really good at dealing with gamers such as myself, and then gamers such as our players, which you know, it can get worse. Let me tell you, it can get worse. And they were just really helpful across the board. So you know, if you would like to sponsor the podcast, 1HP, big up on that. Or if you want to fix your
there's
nerd
some
neck,
space around here that we can do it. You know.
Yeah, wherever the bell fiber isn't.
Yeah.
I can see it. The uncoachable 1 HP section where you just do 5 minutes of wrist stretches every episode.
Yeah, no, one more flexion curl, dude, and your wrist pain will be gone. I swear.
We'll get you ready for another 14 hours of rank. Don't you worry.
Yeah, no, the secret is to stand up every 5 minutes in 30-minute blocks. You know, like.
So I think we've covered a lot of ground. I guess maybe one question I had in mind especially is you've now worked under so many different coaches, so many different people, so many different versions of a system. What did you find worked best for you? And is that the same thing you tried to do for Toronto, or did you try and do your own thing?
So like each team needs their own system, because I think, you know, with Korean players and with Western players, you need a different approach. Korean players, I think, usually can handle a lot more screaming and coaching, in my experience, than Western players. So I think initially, like this season, I tried to do like minimal review, like 30 minutes before scrim, and then like a little bit after the scrim, right? Like I always like to do before the scrim, like a coach-led feedback of like, this is what we're going to focus on. Here are the clips. This is the one point where we want to improve on today. And then after, you know, the scrims, I like to have it more being player-led, especially like led from passion. Like this player has something to say. Okay, give him a stage, and let's watch it together. Let's sit down. But I think, you know, early on, I was like, let's try to make the AT system work, and let's just do what they did before, because they worked at Contenders. And if I don't let them do it, they're going to complain that it wasn't their team, right? So I let them run it out almost for the first couple of weeks. And then I started being like more coach-led, right? As the season went on, Toronto became more and more coach-led. And especially in the second half, I think our system really worked between goal setting, like days once a week, where we literally like do 30 minutes of not even feedback, just like, this is what we're going to do this week. This is what we want to work on. Do you have any complaints about like your teammates or what they were doing this last week? And then, you know, also like coach-led feedback. And one thing Hydron brought, which he saw in Mayhem, is like on Mayhem with Gunba, we used to review every single map that we lost. So let's start doing that. It's literally, I'm trying to do my best Hydron impression. But,
it was good.
So we started doing that, right? And I think that paid a lot of dividends because it made the players like lead their own reviews a lot more and like think for themselves, because we'd have a different person lead the review every single day. So like every person would have to speak, you know, there weren't like freeloaders in that. And I think that system really worked. I think with Shock, we had a lot more laissez-faire, like almost coaching system where we do a fuck ton of individual review, right? I would sit down with Finn like almost every second day. I'd coach Violet a lot. Nike would coach the crap out of Coluge, and then later on Mikey and Crusty would flame Sam, so he had a mental breakdown, right? So it was more one-on-one based. I wouldn't say I copied that system, but when the meta settled down, started doing more macro stuff as well, right, in that system. And then on Atlanta, like season 2, I'd say the Overwatch League in season 2 was just crap. There was a system and we do reviews, but, you know, not having a Korean coach and having free Korean players who are significantly better, it was very all over the place. So there wasn't really a system, but all the coaches were still trying to, put in their all. And we had Silence as a remote coach who was basically feeding info to Sephi, and then Sephi would present it. And it worked to a degree, but
I think
I'd say
Atlanta was just full of cocks, bro. Like no one had the balls to say anything to anyone. Like those players were all like really strong, and all the staff permanently on that team, like historically, just like a lot of people that were like not strong. Not gonna tell a player to shut the fuck up and listen. Like ever.
Yeah, no, a big reason why Gator became head coach is because he was almost doing the coaching.
Yeah, he just he forgot what language he speaks, so that was a small misstep from him. But it can happen. We did the same thing on Gladiators. We got Yaki Marvel, so it can happen.
I think should have got an Australian tank in.
The 5 most accomplished Korean players in recent memory, and expecting them not to have an ego and listen to their one Westerner on the roster might have been a small mistake.
Maybe, just maybe.
Was that Atlanta season 2 roster? That was one where all the Koreans on that team boomed as well, right? It was like
was that Dako?
No, it was just Dako. It was just Dako.
There must be a Dako story in here, which is just outrageous. I feel like we haven't had the title yet.
All right,
so
I think
Dako can give us a title.
Go on, air it out, mate. Air it
out. It's like, okay, so here's the preface, right? This kid was bullied on Element Mystic because he was the youngest kid because there's a full Korean roster. You guys know the drill at this point. So he comes to America, $16 million mansion, insane house, pool, spa, everything, gets his own room, gets to live his life, right? He has only 2 other Korean teammates who I think were more passive. I think especially Erster, one of the most passive people I've ever seen. Just plays good and doesn't say much, right? And Pokpo was very sweet. But basically, for the Koreans, it was the Dako show at that point. He's like, I'm in America. I'm no longer oppressed by all my older Koreans in the culture, right? I will live my life. And there were times in scrims where we would be losing. He would rage quit the scrim. He would go to his room, take the handle off the door and lock it, and he just wouldn't come out for the rest of the day. And our translator, Dongman, would be like knocking on his door like, Dako, come out. Dako, come out. Right? Like, it was almost like he was being served, like in a way. And I was just like, cut his pay for the whole day and let him be there. And eventually it got to a point where he was just disruptive enough where we had to sign another off tank because even though Dako was good enough, he was just too disruptive to the scrims at times. So we signed Fried Wiener. And I feel bad for Fried Wiener, but he was almost like, oh, Dako doesn't want to play. Okay, you're in now. Right?
Yeah.
Which I don't think that's a very good way to run a team, but that's how we did it. And eventually, we did swap over to full Fried Wiener, right? Think of stage 4, our undefeated stage. We played only Fried Wiener.
I think X, depending on how risky you want to get, I think he finally stopped being oppressed by his older Koreans is a brilliant title that will only bring good comments on Twitter.
There will be no repercussions for that one. I think it'll be fine. But no one had a problem when Astro was like, I want to punch this guy in the face. That was fine. That's fine, but
that made for a good title.
As long as people don't comment on just the title and watch the full video, I'm sure that will.
No one would ever just do that, Cass. Come on now, give people some credit.
Yeah.
All right, are we all any more Casores focused questions? Anything we feel we haven't covered? I feel like we talked about Shock, a little bit of Atlanta, Toronto. We've covered the future Toronto super team that will ruin all of our collective lives for the foreseeable future.
Lose.
Yep.
And never lose,
Yeah.
So then, should we do, I guess, the only major tournament that's happened is Saudi Arabia. So we do a little Saudi Arabia summary of Saudi E-League. Not a sponsored segment, but yeah.
We have the head coach of the winning team. And actually, because I've been paid money to watch it, I've watched all of the games. So I'm quite well informed about this subject.
Yeah, I think we actually have quite a good list of people to talk about Saudi E-Leagues with the
Yeah.
whole analyst desk, the head coach, the assistant coach for the winning team, or just the coach. They don't really do titles in Saudi
The guy
Arabia.
in the
we've got the
stands
booth
with
coach.
Hadi
We've got
all the
yeah,
time.
we've got
Well,
the
I never saw
we've
you
got
in
the
the
booth
booth,
coach.
Max. So
Yeah,
that's
Willie
what
was in the
I'm always like head. Yeah. Why weren't you in the
so
booth?
we've got Willie V in the booth, so we've got the booth coach, the LAN coach.
The
We've got the online coach in Saudi Arabia, so that would be me. Or I stand with Hardy as well. I chill with Hardy in the crowd.
The head chaperone.
And then we've got the guy that should have been me, but I took his job.
I actually got offers before the two of you. But I couldn't go to Saudi, so I actually got it first. Not to flex or anything, but I got it first. But then,
so I'm the only person in the call not to be offered the job.
Incredible.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess there isn't too much to talk about. I think that the only thing that we maybe wanted to discuss was, did you think that you were going to lose that final once it went to 2-2?
No, not really, to be honest. Maybe I got like a little bit more nervous or something, just because we weren't 4-0ing them. But like I was really confident, like once I started watching the series, that it was like we're just better than this team in the neutral, like our talent level is like for sure significantly higher than this team, like the maps that we lose, like it's just like hard losing to ourselves, like people basically got into the mindset when we were 2-0 up that it's like, fuck, these guys are so shit, let's just try and end it quick, like it wasn't that the team was like buckling due to a lack of talent and it being like a super close competitive game, like they get a bit ahead of themselves because they dominated them so hard the first time, go up 2-0 and it's like, oh, let's embarrass them, but apparently the skill disparity wasn't quite large enough to completely embarrass the opponent, so I had to give away a couple of maps. But no, I think that like if you look at like Quartz, that guy is just so far ahead of anyone else at Overwatch. Like I'm not being even remotely like Saudi dick righty when I say that, like I think with 100% certainty like Quartz is the best main DPS in the world now. Like I think that people like Lip and Shy, these guys are like 22 years old or something, 22, 23 maybe. Like these guys have got to be like on the back ends of their careers, like maybe they're all at a similar level, like Quartz, Shy, Lip, at like Sojourn or something, right? Because they've all been playing it. But you look at something new like Bastion, and it's like, holy fuck, like Quartz is so much better. And all of these new heroes that are going to come out in the future, like Quartz is going to be the one that's better at them, Like anything that's new, the young up-and-comer that is still in fucking high school is for sure going to be better than these guys that have been career gamers since they were kids, because he's already that good, So if you're already at that level, you're going to surpass it when you have more time to play. And Quartz is literally a high school kid. So I think for sure, like, if he's not the best main DPS in the world right now, he's absolutely going to be. So I think like with Quartz, it's I don't know how Twisted Minds could lose. Really, another level.
It's funny because if he'd accepted the Florida contract, he probably would have won Overwatch League into winning the World Cup, and then the big one, obviously Saudi E-Leagues to complete the three-peat. He actually could have fucking won it all in his first season.
Yeah, genuinely. Like, I think if you slot that guy in instead of Merit, like maybe the team, maybe because I'm not sure about his Sombra, maybe they blame him a lot, and then the team like fucks up culturally. But like for the meta in the second half of the year, like he would have been a fucking fantastic fit, like he's not just like a brain dead. He's not like a brain dead aim one trick, Like he's a really, really, really high level player. It's like the team plays Sim Mei and he slots in on Mei, a hero that I'm pretty sure he has like very limited experience on, and he's fucking insane at that too. Like just a really, really super high level player. Like the highest level you could possibly ask for, and he's just fucking shitting on everyone in Saudi E-Leagues. Like you watch these matches and it's like it's 2 ults to 5. And oh look, Quartz just killed 3 of the players by himself, and they all had ults. Like, oh, that works. Really, he's a get out of jail free card.
Yeah, like Alfie, when we talk about that, the scoreboard when Alfie was playing, and it was just always hiding everyone else in the lobby, no matter what. It's like Quartz is doing that, and obviously also playing for the best team. But yeah, he looked so fucking good. I
think a lot of the Sojourn players looked quite good at this event, like QLM and Rojo. But like even in that grand final, when it felt like GK was spending all of it. They obviously GK got fucked by Quartz in the upper bracket final, so then decided, well, let's try and fuck him back a little bit. But Quartz still giga gap teenage, and I really don't think he was playing that bad. But it was like some maps it was just double damage from Quartz. Like every time he gets, it's like the first shot accuracy. Like every time he just gets for rail, peeks on the flank, he just hits it. And it's Landon who's dying, right? And Landon's not bad at Overwatch. Landon is the sort of player I think puts a lot of effort if he dies to a certain thing or a certain flank to fix it and try and make sure it doesn't happen again. But Quartz would just do it from a slightly different angle or pick him again, and there was like no actual real way, I think, for GK or anyone to stop him this event.
Yeah, I think just a different level. And it's like I think one thing about Sojourns is like if you look at the damage stat, you can often be like a little bit deceived, you know. Like I think Kevster is really good at Sojourn, but there's like absolutely no case for him being the best surgeon, you know? Like Kevster is someone who, if you look at them statistically, you'll think, holy shit, this guy must be crazy at surgeon, because Kevster is like always like a top damage surgeon, you know? Like he will always have insanely high damage on the hero. But then you look at like a scatter chart of the final blows and you see like a really different story, because some of these heroes, it's like, it's not just about your raw output, you know? It's, did you point at that guy's head with the one button that actually matters on the hero, you know?
Have a right
and people
time.
like Quartz, it's like, they're really fucking high damage, but it's like, they hit the shot every single time in the head, you know? And like Kevster, he'll play for like full output and he'll have really high damage all the time and apply a lot of pressure, but Quartz will win you the fight before it's even started by just killing the player, you know? Like he actually gets the final blow before the fight is even started. So yeah. I think it's like it's a different level of mechanical skill.
When I watch the replays back as well, like sometimes, I'm sure we've all had games like this as well, where you just watch it back and you're just like, if I was day one coaching GK, I don't even know what to tell my fucking team. Like, he just peaked and he hit the shot in the first half a second of peaking. We can't stop him getting rail. We can't, like, how do we actually stop this? If a guy just hits all the shots, he's got a really good chance of winning.
Yeah.
I was talking to Majed after the World Cup, and he was like, after we were 2-0 down against China, I think Juby told the team to just fuck it and play just laissez-faire and just go in. Is that kind of what it was like with Twisted Mind in the Saudi League? Because I remember you guys being 1-1 against GK in the first series in the upper bracket, and then your tempo went like 5x. Like you guys started playing so fast. I don't know who's the one calling that, or is it a coaching thing or a player thing? But I think that's always
it's definitely like it's a player-led thing with those guys, you know. But like, it wasn't even one of the Saudi guys, I think, because literally for these E-Leagues matches, like I'm not even in the booth, right? Because they have a Saudi coach as well, and he's in the booth. So like between that coach, for that map, the booth coach. But for that, between maps 2 and 3, where like the tempo completely switched up, it was like that was Kellex, I'm pretty sure, because I remember Kellex like standing up, going over to Yubi, because Yubi's like the in-game leader more or less, standing up, going over to Yubi, and I can just see like Kellex expressive speech for like a minute straight, you know, just like talking more and more about like how he wants to play. And I know that like he was basically saying like, you know, we're just being complete fucking cocks, because, you know, like the team was just trying to play like a little too slow for the pace of the game that they're actually really good at. You know, this is a team that, you know, it thrives when people mash their heads against the wall and Quartz kills someone in the chaos, you know. So if you just stand around doing nothing for too long, you know, Quartz will get his pick regardless, but, you know, someone might fall over along the way. But yeah, it's more a player-led thing. And I think with that team, even for the World Cup, you know, no Kellex making that speech, but for sure, this is something that like someone like Yubi would 100% be saying, because Yubi is like a major leadership figure, you know, like in game, during the game, Kellex will say a bit, you know, he'll like talk about adjustments and stuff like that, but Yubi will call the shots like all the time on that team, like 100% of the time. That guy will be talking in every fight, you know. He really is like full on in-game leader, that type of player. Yeah.
So yeah, no real surprises ultimately. I guess the only real question left is which members of this team is Casores going to try and sign for his Toronto super team?
It's a good question.
Well, like it's pretty hard, because you know how long Majed took to get to Toronto? He took like 6 months. I don't know if I can ever sign a Saudi Arabian player again, because
Quartz is worth a wait, I reckon.
I would imagine
Does the fact there's no league make it hard to get visas? Because I know, at least for America, the league basically would do a lot of the visa work. Like the Overwatch League was a recognized like sporting thing, because that was the thing in season 1. It was one of the big announcements, like, oh yeah, we've partnered with like effectively the fucking US government to get like our players can get P1 visas, which is obviously what we were on. If there's no league, does that actually make it even harder to get a visa? Because you can't say, oh, he's going to play in the Overwatch League, he's going to do X and Y.
I think in general, Canada is more like we are friends with this country, so it's easy for them to get a visa from what I've experienced so far. And I couldn't tell you if it's hard to get a visa now, especially to Canada. But I just know last season it was really hard to get Majed over because apparently the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Canada, I think it's improved a little bit now, but back then was pretty tough. So we took like 6 months to get Majed a visa. It was like he wasn't there for the first half of the season, so we didn't even get a chance to like play him on Ana just because, you know, especially from Saudi to NA, it's impossible to play. Just impossible. So we actually had him for the qualifier tournament for the couple of maps that he was going to play. He went to London himself to play on better ping. And he stayed with like a friend in the UK to play like in the mid-season qualifier.
I wonder if that Twisted Minds team is going to stay together, if they will dominate Europe the way they have now that there's like some sort of like Overwatch League talent back in. I wonder, because obviously like it feels like Flash Ops in theory is going to come down to like my team XO versus probably Gunba's team like SR Peak. Like I think we actually played in the first round, but I feel like we're going to like, I feel like unless one of us really fucks up, we should both make it to the finals. I wonder how Twisted would do inside that like same game, if they are the best team, or if like, I suppose the thing is with Twisted too is I feel like this is the thing with the EU, especially as long as I get to keep coaching Kevza, the second there's a dive meta, I feel like our team is just going to like overlap every single like other European team, unless they find a way to force like non-dive comps that are actually effective.
Yeah, I do think that like, you know, your team has like this monopoly on Kevstar, and you know, basically the only guy that's good at dive. But at the same time, like you actually need like multiple pieces to make dive work, you know. And Europe is still missing a lot of those pieces. Like there's really no like top level like Ana players or anything like that, you know. Like there's no really insane dive flex supports, I would say. And at the same time, like the tank pool is super fucking limited, especially for dive tanks. Like the best dive tank player in Europe is probably Hardy, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And Hardy, he might be playing on your team now, that he won't be in the future, right? Like if EXO, I mean, if Twisted is competing in EU contenders, Hardy is on Twisted Minds, right? So you're missing like key pieces. Even if you have Kevster, who will for sure gap absolutely everyone in a hard dive meta. Europe has historically been a region where it's like even when dive is meta, they're still finding a way to fucking play rush, right? Like that's the MO of the region. And then like, you know, you've got Kevster Sparker trying to play like dive in World Cup qualifiers, and it just is not the European talent. There is not the Swedish talent to make it work. So I definitely think that like even when you have the best dive flex DPS you could possibly ask for, there's still some obstacles for you over in Europe, you know? And I'd say that like right now, Twisted would for sure win in Europe. Maybe with the patch change that happened today, like I'm not sure anymore, just because I haven't even seen the patch yet.
I guess one thing that
makes up the meta.
One thing that's really true for Twisted is they've essentially, the Saudi team success and Twisted Mind success has all come in essentially the same meta, when they can have KSA on Sig and when they can have like a May Sojourn or a May Bastion type comp. So we've not seen them outside of that, right, really, at least have any big success.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think that team is really, really strong, right?
The question becomes, right, if Quartz can't play hit scan, I think the team is kind of screwed in a way. Because if it's like a Sombra Tracer meta, I think it's really hard for Twisted. But I think wherever like Quartz can play hit scan, it might work out quite well. And I think probably if you're Twisted Mind, you're never gonna play Winston. You're always gonna force a meta where you can put KSA on a stationary tank.
Yeah.
Even when the Overwatch League was that Sombra Tracer super meta in EU contenders, Twisted were winning with like Farah comps and stuff, right? Like they would play like Queen comps, like Farah.
Twisted was like 1 season Farah, 1 season Ram, maybe multiple seasons Ram. Actually, they were playing Rush most of the way through. They only had 1 season.
Yeah, they'll never actually play dive. Like it'll never be. So the question is there a patch that's strong enough that some sort of Kevster-based European team can beat it, like just like through, like I guess like map, like meta favor.
One thing you should think about is like Kevster was known to be fucking insane back in the day. You know, like every European player knew that Kev was that guy, right? How many times did Kev win in Europe before he went to Overwatch League?
Did he ever play?
I'm pretty sure Kev lost, right? Like I have to double check this.
He played with Doge for a while.
I'm pretty sure that guy never won in tier 2.
Yeah, I mean,
before NRT, he was on August and Hungary and last night's leftovers.
Yeah, like that's been one challenge that we've had, like figuring out how to develop our style in this meta, like on one that's like so Mei Lucio based. Is like I feel like if I'm putting Kev on Mei, then I'm just griefing, you know. Like I have to find like brawlier solutions to get the best out of him, which I think we can do. And I think if somehow Blizzard decides that they actually want to let the new hero be played in a tournament, which I mean seems to be the most fucking logical thing I've ever seen in terms of why would we protect flash ops so that it's like a super competitive game where 2 weeks isn't enough to learn a new hero, when fucking Overwatch League they would just throw that shit in. But if there is Mauga, then my feeling is that he's going to be more of a like an Orisa or a Queen based hero where he actually fits better with Genji than he does with Mei, which would maybe be good for a Kevster based team. But it feels like with what we have to do, like with Kev, we have to almost play like the Boston style of the meta, which is like the Queen and the Orisa, Lucio, Genji comps. And then obviously SRP will play the Florida style, and then we'll see who makes it work, you know?
Yeah.
So that's, when is it? The 14th, not next weekend, but weekend after. We'll get the answer to all these questions.
Yeah.
Nothing else really happened. North America didn't play yet, so they're in the same boat of Europe, just waiting. But it really kind of looks like the American Tornado boys are going to take that one home, unless the lights get too bright, of course.
Well, I will say that in the qualifier match, it did play against the RuPaul team, which is obviously the second best team, but they were missing Hawk. So I think with Hawk, that team does stand a chance, because I was watching some of their comms, because every match is live stream. It's great. It's fantastic. And you know, Hawk did seem to be like a big leader for them, so it just depends, right, on what team can show up on the day. But I do think, you know, a team with RuPaul, Sugar Free, Hawk can stand up to the AT guys as well.
Yeah.
Maybe in like hard Sigma meta, then Coluge's skill gap on Hawk was enough. But like I think, you know, Sig's on the way down now with what they're doing with the patches.
Doom got a buff
I think
too this patch.
Hawk will look way fucking better. And Hawk was already playing Doom back then, so I think
exactly.
that's going to be really interesting. Yeah, because Hawk's fucking nuts at Doom. Really good.
All right.
So let's do user questions into a quiz and wrap it up. We'll just do a couple of user questions. Let's see. I'll try and cherry pick the best ones as opposed to cherry picking the worst ones.
That would be the worst way to do it.
The cherries, you know.
Just only picking the most rotten, disgusting cherries. All right, so this one we can maybe turn to. So Janglin asked, the best coach you've worked with and under. Obviously, maybe Krusty's going to fall at top by default, but maybe you could give us like a power ranking top 3. Because obviously you worked with like 9K, Jumbuck, Sephi.
I'd say probably like in the things that he does, I think 9K is probably the best overall coach I've worked with. I think 9K has like a really good understanding of the game, and he also helps tanks players a ton. And I think tank players like are honestly 50% of your team, right? In Overwatch 2 especially, like they decide the pace of the game. Tank characters are just in general OP. So I think 9K having been able to help both Coluge and Mikey in season 5 was so pivotal, and the guy knows a lot about the game. And I think, the assistant coach role to Crusty, where he doesn't always need to say something, but when he does a review or when he says something, it always like had big impact, and then obviously, Crusty 9K together, Crusty like supplements that really well with his one-on-one coaching and more individually based approach. I think just from a DPS perspective, Crusty knows so much for each character except Sombra. I think that's a shout to all the Crusty Sombra years where we just sucked in those metas, absolutely. But I also think it comes down to like all the teams that don't have a Sombra player kind of struggled with Sombra. And you kind of just let the Sombra figure it out and just help them along the way. But yeah, I think Crusty 9K solidly at the top. And then I didn't work with Junkbuck that much because I was feeding all my info to Crusty straight away. But I think when I do hear Junkbuck review and when I hear him speak, I think it's always so concise and good. He doesn't ramble on for like long times and makes
not like 9K.
Not like he makes hard concepts seem simple, and I think that's Junkbuck's strength. So I think, yeah, those 3 are definitely the top 3, and there's a reason they found so much success in season 2 and 3, and then even after that, right? Like Houston this year, I think it was carried a lot by individual mechanics, but there's definitely like coaching there that did its job.
Yeah, I think especially to like 9K's credit, if he was doing when we played season 5 Shock and we were playing Rhine, we'd always find the shit Winstons. We would just beat those teams. But over the course of time, Coluge stopped being a shit Winston. Like we would got harder and harder for us to punish him. And that's maybe not something I ever would have expected from Coluge on the surface playing Winston against us. But we definitely felt the difference, I think, as that season went on. Okay, the next one is from Bazo. So this is a bridge burner of a question.
From Bazo. Oh, wow. This will be
Fuck,
good.
dude.
This will be a good one.
So he says, who was your least favorite player to work with across all the players? Or any player you knew who hated your coaching?
Well, that's an easy question. I've already burnt that bridge. It's definitely Daco. I think anybody on the Atlanta Reign in season 2,
wanted an AT player.
Daco was like so like his own vision was like the way, and then we also couldn't talk with him properly because his English was just shit. Is funny. I think something like really interesting last year that happened, and I think this could be like a lesson for a lot of people. It's we gave all 3 of our Koreans English lessons at the start of the year, Proper, Finn, and Kilo, and Proper and Finn learned English very quickly, and especially Finn spoke like fluent English by the end of the year. Proper spoke good English, and Kilo still did not learn a word of English. So, working with Kilo, I had to speak in Korean, or he would not understand, basically. Because I remember like 3/4 of the way through the year, there was a match where we were on Dorado, and somebody called, Kilo, can you go bottom left, to where that big pack is? And Kilo just walked right side aimlessly. Like he just did not understand bottom left 3/4 of the way through the year. So I think there might be a learning deficiency there or something going on. But that was tough to work with because he couldn't listen and he couldn't understand. Like even in Korean, they also said he was stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you burn an AT player? Because Bazo is a very
We'll
very
do one from each
famous
season,
AT
yeah.
fan.
So who's the
That's not right.
who's the toughest?
I think toughest to work with was Speedily, just because he was very set in his ways on how to play the game and like his own vision. And even on Tracer, a character like, he doesn't like have much experience on. He would kind of play his own way, and it worked out in scrims to his credit. But then in the match, I don't know what happened, but he would just die randomly because he was trying to get too much value everywhere, and he couldn't, put a stick on somebody for their life in a meta where if you don't stick Brig, that character just doesn't die. So I think hardest to work with, like probably like Speedily or Hydron, but Hydron was very coachable, right? Like he is very, very coachable. He just likes to also stick to his own ways. I think Speedily was the hardest to coach. And then, but they pale in comparison to Dako.
He's the OG.
All right, then last one. And we maybe touched on this a little bit, but this is from Ennis, who says, "Hope you guys die soon," which is
Thank
nice
you.
to see. The only guy
thank
still
you.
sending us death threats. I've lost it now. Where are we? Okay, so hypothetical. It's for next season. Overwatch League. It's saved. Miraculously, it's back. Somehow, some way, they pulled it out of their ass. It's back. You still have all your Toronto players on whatever contracts they're on before. What's the off season? Who are you signing? Who are you keeping? Who are you signing?
Oh God, way to burn. That's a tough question, right?
That's what we do here.
I think if you want to keep a Western core, there's only so many tanks you can keep. And across the years of my Overwatch League, I've started leaning towards more lean rosters. Like you want smaller rosters and you just want players that can play every character, especially on DPS, but I think also more and more so on tank. So because Coluge can play a lot of the characters, I think you keep Coluge. And because Spectra is on 50K and a total perfect budget option, he loves the team. He's really good to work with. Speaks perfect English. Is like the perfect crossover player. If you want to sign another Korean, he can help them. I think Coluge at Spectra are like a good lock for me if I can extend their 1+1 contract. I think due to our results and due to how everything's going, the rest wouldn't be an instant lock, and I'd look where to look further. But I think if it's due to flexibility and one thing that just burned me this year is being able to play metas. So I think Spectres and Coluge both flexibility. Maybe get a main tank this time that doesn't ditch on me right before the season starts.
Well, super then, Reiner. You've got a bit of a streak going here with tanks ditching you before the season.
I don't know what's up with them. They just don't want to work with me.
All right, then. Well, who would you sign? Like, who would be top of your list to get in?
Ooh, that's a question where I'm like, I can't give away too many secrets, but top of the list, obviously, if you can get him, I don't know what's going on with Twisted Mind, but would be Quartz. I think there's very little good Western hit scans. Like the problem with a lot of Western hit scans, and you might have experienced this last year, Max, is that they are kind of turrets. Like they'll either hit the shot or they will die.
Use their legs, dude.
Right?
They don't use their legs. They like to stand still.
So movement abilities, right, is like not as good for Western hit scans. This is also like Kilo last year had the same problem, right? It's just hit scan players. Ons had the same problem, right? Like
it's like shy lipping everyone else, bro. Like this, you say like Western versus, it's like
Merit's pretty good. Merit's pretty good.
Okay, you're right.
He's up there, but I think in Overwatch 2, hit scans need to move their asses. If there's no Western player except for Quartz that moves their ass really well, I'd say. So Quartz is a lock if you're like building your dream roster. I think if you're building like your fantasy roster, you put like Quartz proper someone, and then I don't know, for flex support, main support is pretty hard. But I think
Chio's Renko, right?
Yeah, Plumino and Renko. Nah, I think Chio's fielders like undisciplined success is like there, but obviously I'm looking to build like a Western Korean mixed roster if I'm like trying to build a roster to win. So,
Western supports.
I think Landon has to be the best right now, right?
Yeah.
Like I think
Landon and RuPaul, right?
Yeah, RuPaul obviously is also really, really good. The only thing that's the problem with Western flex supports is like their BAP is like here, and the rest of their supports are like way lower, right?
Well, I mean, RuPaul's Ana is pretty high now.
Yeah,
I thought RuPaul's Ana was
RuPaul,
the thing I impressed me the most with him.
Otherwise, probably the best thing is keep UV, add Landon, and then just get some Lucio player, and then you actually just have like
Vega or something, right?
Yeah.
Just get some guy.
Yeah.
Anyone who's got his skates on.
Yeah, genuinely. I mean, he got fucking opener, mate. Like, he's happy to get some guy from
Yeah, there we go with the Vega Bidding War again. I wonder what team he would have went to. Maybe he can tell us.
But this time around, you can win any bidding war that's going on.
Oh, there is no bidding war. No.
No,
but I mean, obviously, right? Players still have like a certain, like, this is the problem with a lot of players now. They're like, oh, an org is offering me, and this is what I made last year. You know, I don't know if I can take this new offer. I'm gonna wait out my offers, you know, because to be fair, like, even Toronto, we can't offer what was offered last year, right? It's Overwatch League is gone. There's no income. You know, the only place and why Toronto still exists is because we have sponsors and because our owner, right, Adam, loves Overwatch, right? We have existing sponsors that want to sponsor the Overwatch team and have deals with them, and our owner loves Overwatch. And, you know, whatever comes next for Overwatch esports, we're actually quite optimistic about. You know, because for example, the viewership on the World Cup was like twice as high as the viewership on the All Grand Finals. So if you bring it to Twitch, you allow co-streaming, I think viewership for Overwatch can still be good. It's just that the Overwatch League wasn't making any money, so maybe a rebuild is good. I just wish we heard things a little bit sooner about what that rebuild's going to look like and if it's going to be good or not. And I think you guys must share that opinion.
Yeah, probably more than you.
You know, like, for most people, when they're sitting in uncertainty, they're not getting paid. So I reckon, like, it's definitely the ideal situation for you. Low key.
Okay, should we do a quiz?
Let's do it, Quizmaster.
Okay, so
Don't call him that, man.
I've
What should
recently
I call him?
realized
Quiz boy?
that there's actually a website with a lot of stats on it, which is really useful for quizzes. So what I'm going to ask is to keep it simple. I can dig into it more when I actually care about it. I literally didn't care about it this week. I forgot I had to do a quiz, so I'm hoping it's right. I'm going to ask for the top 10 players overall across all seasons of Overwatch League in map win percentage. A minimum of 100 maps has to be played, so you can't have like ChrisTFer, for example. And I'm going to limit it to 4 guesses per person, because my feeling is with this one, actually, we like, you know how you like eventually you're like, oh, we can figure it out. This is literally every player in the Overwatch League. So 100 maps played, highest win percentage, top 10 players.
Did you say 100 maps?
They have to have played 100 maps or more.
Would that so if you played one full season of Overwatch League and let's say you start most maps, would that put you on 100?
Yeah, easily.
Okay.
Well,
okay, so before going into this quiz, I just want to say I watch these episodes sometimes, and it always amazes me how bad Unter is at these quizzes. So I hope I can. He's like two questions in. He's like, "Oh, who is that other player?"
Yeah. I think the quiz might be like a soft intelligence test, so like we might be in a bit of trouble here. But yeah.
I will say this. Apparently, according to this, Donghack has only played 52 maps. So if it's only this season, they probably don't make it in, because I don't think Donghack missed too many maps. But it obviously depends. Like if you played every game of season 2, you played like 4 fucking billion maps, you know. So, but yeah, 4 guesses each, and then if there's a tiebreaker, we'll do one more guess, or I have a separate tiebreaker if we want to do it. Who wants to go first? Guest first.
Guest first.
Sure, I'll go first. Violet.
Yes, he is 9th place with 68.2%.
Maybe Arns.
No.
Not the worst shout, actually.
Brilliant.
So it's highest win percentage, right? So it's got to be someone like Chio, right?
Yeah, Chio is on there, I think. Let's see. Ans was actually 12th, to be fair, so you weren't a million miles away.
But we were not in the top 10, so it's
no,
over.
So it's a red X. Yeah, Chio, 226 maps played. Yeah, 226 maps, 69.5% win record. I think that puts him 6th.
So that was Chio, 6th for Chio, 5th or 6th.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
6th.
Does Stalker have enough games played?
He played season 5, I think. I don't know how much he won.
Oh right, fuck, he was on solo.
So no for Stalker. So that gives do these two.
And I'll stick with main DPS that are wrong, and I'll go with Lip.
Yep, Lip correct. 441 games played, so a lot of games played, but 70% win record. So Lip's unbelievably high for the amount of games he played. And I think that puts him 3rd overall.
Damn.
Yeah, did pretty well.
Wow. Hanbin? I don't know if his earlier seasons, like the Paris years, will screw him over. You know?
Yeah, it did screw him over. Hanbin not on the list. So we got two guesses each, and then we'll see. So I think
where was Hanbin in the ranking?
He's not even on the top 12. I would need to.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've only got the top page here. So 2 guesses each. 1-1-1.
I wondered if the Paris screw him over, but I think Fielder because he did.
I was thinking. I was thinking.
No, Fielder the same thing. I imagine.
Bloody hell!
Oh fuck's sake, Paris!
It'll be almost identical to Hanbin in terms of that.
He came in later. I'm sure
someone will correct us in the comment section about how I've got it wrong. But that Paris season, they actually had a lot of metas where they lost a lot of games. Whereas a lot of the names on here basically were just didn't lose.
Who the fuck didn't lose in the Overwatch League? I feel like Shu, like he could sneak in there because even when he was on charge, the guy was like low key winning all the time. But
well, you guys, even though you guys did badly at the end, you were successful for a long time with Shu, right? Like you won a lot of regular season games.
Yeah, but he probably lost too much on charge.
Yeah, Shu, I imagine is nowhere near it. He's definitely not on the list. I think most of the players kind of hit like 3 main teams in terms of like the eras that they were on.
Yeah, there you go.
I think I've got it.
Wait, so is it my guess?
Yeah, your guess.
So using the logic, now he probably didn't have a very good season 1, but he wasn't old enough to play for a lot of it, and he's always an answer on the quiz. Sinatra.
Yeah, he's back. But no comments, of course.
Yeah, no comment.
But yeah, Sinatra is back on the Uncoachable quiz. Everyone will be happy to know he
came up twice this episode. Fuck.
I think he's 69.7% win record. Just behind Lip. 229 games for him.
Have we got any of the top 3 yet, or top 4?
No, the top. Lip was 3rd, so we got Lip, and Sinatra was 4th. So we're missing 1 and 2.
I'll go with Moth.
Yeah, Moth is 10th, so 10th? Just at the bottom there, 68.1.
Yeah, Moth must have tanked because of
Gladiators.
Brief time on the Gladiators.
Well, he didn't play that many maps though.
It's like with this, it's enough to just drop him, you know.
Oh fuck, dude! Like, what do they have? Is it like fucking? It can't be Rascal, right? That guy lost way too much, didn't he?
No,
like,
he's played it
Rascal. Yeah.
Whoa.
Because
so,
it's
interesting. It's interesting because assuming that this website is correct, Rascal is in 5th place with 69.6, but it reckons he only has 289 games. For reference, Violet played 677, so it reckons Violet played well over twice the maps that Rascal played, even though
some of those short seasons Rascal didn't play that much though, right?
Yeah.
Well, even in Goats, Rascal didn't play. No, Architect played a lot as well.
No, they benched Architect for Rascal.
Yeah, but they both played during that year, right? It wasn't like Rascal was playing every game, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that I think means if you get last one, if you get it right, you win. If you get it wrong, then we do another round maybe.
All right, so this is maybe a hot take, but my logic is if you play a bit of season 1, you've played a fuckload of maps, right? And he only came in when they started being good. So mistakes.
Wow, an outrageously hot take. Not on the list.
Not enough games, I suspect. You know?
You reckon he was
Yeah,
such
I-
a because he would have been so like that when he came in. I feel like Boston pretty much only won and then did quite well in playoffs. But
Yeah, you know what? I can-
I don't know how
'Cause
they did.
I was gonna-
before.
I was gonna pick Patty, but it's like he just didn't play enough games. You know, like 100
Yeah.
is a lot.
Patty is actually like 60 games, but he has a high win rate than anyone on the list. But he
Right.
doesn't.
Yeah,
he
he's
just,
like the most winning player in Overwatch.
Yeah,
by like
except for
percentage. You know.
So we got
Yeah, it's
number
like-
2 left.
Yeah, we have 1, 2. Where were we? We've done that. We have 8 left, 7 left, 1 and 2. So 4 to go. We'll do another round. See if we can squeeze a winner out of this old quiz here.
How about Choyobin?
Yes.
I just
Oh,
thought
I was
that was going
going
to be
for
a good
him.
one.
That was
Yeah.
that's tough. So now I'm
only
Choi
on the
number
shock for the glory years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Choi number 2. It's 70.4. So
I had a
yeah.
70 win rate.
Jeez.
Yeah,
Bloody
70% win rate across 440 maps. Troy Oben, real goat candidate here.
That's insane because that guy was so shit in his final season too. So
Wow.
that's really nuts. Yeah, now we're in like real trouble. Has someone said super yet?
You have, and you've just won 8th place, 68.5.
Yeah.
So we have
Winners.
2 left. So I'll wait. You both got one right. Okay, so I think if X gets this one wrong, he's eliminated. If he gets it right, then we keep going.
Surely.
Mistakes was such a hot take. You had it. What an outrageous decision to
What?
get this.
You really had it in the bag and you went with
Look at
this
his
team.
win percentage. Look at his win. Get his win percentage. I'm sure it's
I've
decent.
just searched. He's not in the top 50, mate. Hanbin, like Fielder, all these people make it.
Is it because he's not played enough maps, though? Is he like?
No. This has got everyone. He's not in the top 50, mate. Venom has a higher win rate than him. Okay. Nuts. NUS is sat here at 61% above Mistake. 2 left. Number 1 and number 7.
So many players have had like really on these like championship rosters have also just had like a dog fucking season that would have ruined it as well.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think who hasn't had one of those seasons. Is it? Is it Lee Jae Gong or something? I feel like he's not actually had like too bad a season.
11th. That's very unlucky. He's 1 off.
Oh, that's so close.
Yeah, he's 67.6, but unfortunately you are eliminated. So
Fuck's
2
sake,
to
mate.
go. If you so I'll say this now, it's the 2. It's no longer San Francisco Shock. And actually these 2 players have the lowest maps played out of everyone on our list. And they both played for
That
the same-
burns like everything I had in my head.
Yeah.
And it's
they
definitely
both-
not mistakes, right?
It's not mistakes.
Have we guessed someone from their
Surprising.
team already? Like from their
I don't think
historic
so.
team?
Not yet. This is a team that no one's thought about yet. But when you think about it, it'll make sense.
Oh boy.
I'm stumped. Low
Short-term
games.
Oh,
plays.
I think I know the team.
That's a good thing you're eliminated.
Yeah.
then, mate.
Yeah.
I'll keep it to
Um,
myself.
Yeah. And we've not even considered this team.
No, it's like
None of the championship teams.
Would you want?
no.
Do you want me to give the team I think it is?
I gotta
Go on.
I mean,
What, is it that like Vancouver Titans team, like the Goats team?
Yeah.
Because a lot of those players weren't in the league that long either.
Yeah, they didn't play season 1 and they dropped out quickly afterwards. So they just kind of came, won,
Right.
and then left.
is it Bumper because he got cut when they started losing, so he didn't even play the lossy bits.
Bumper is the number 1 player in the
Wow.
league with over 100 games.
Of course, of
Yeah.
course.
So
Yeah.
Bumper has a 74% win record, actually way higher than the others with 153 games played. So yeah, Bumper is number 1, and then we've got one other player
that
for
must
that same
be-
roster.
Must be Janu, right?
It's not. It's
Oh, it's not Johnny.
Sumin Su. Suminsu.
Oh my god!
I thought it wasn't going to be him because he got put on another team. But I'm thinking about it, and it's like he made it to another team, and then he just didn't fucking play. Well, they put him in for like one Reaper map.
He was
the
on
whole
Spark,
season.
right?
So does this mean that I've won the quiz? Which means
Wow.
I've won the quiz more than anyone else on the show. Which means Casores can suck my very, very humbly sized cock. Like fuck you.
It's
You've
illegal
impressed me.
over again.
You've impressed me last week with Funny Astro. You were like,
You're like a consistent defeat. Yeah, it was like it was one quiz. It was a blip. You know, I'd been drinking before the cast. Like, I was in Saudi Arabia. I take it back. I had not been drinking before the cast.
I cut that.
Yeah. The comment section will inevitably void your success because it will be wrong.
All of these will be wrong.
It's never a correct quiz.
If anyone can prove that mistakes was in fact the correct answer.
So, do you want me to search them for you?
Yeah. I felt like I was on like a real like when you just feel like in your head it's going to be your moment like no one would have predicted I would have gone season 1 Boston and it would have been
101 games played, 56% win rate, so not even fucking close.
Sake.
Not even close. Do you want to know who is one of the players? Did you remember a player called Only Wish?
Like
the
Chinese
guy,
player, right?
Main sport
Yeah.
or something?
2 maps played, 2 wins, so he enters the 100 club. Do you remember a player called Rise?
No.
I
Who the
think
fuck
so.
Was he
No,
on
I don't know
charge? Was he on charge or something?
Played for Charge, also 100% win record. Chipser, obviously 100% win record. IDDQD, 100% win record. Snow, 100% win record. And Anion, the last player to fill in the 100%
They just
win
played
record.
Chicken Royale and they won it, didn't they?
Yeah, that's
That's
it.
the only
So
match
all
he
of those
played, I
players had
think.
only one or two maps played, but they are the 100 club.
Finish that story to now that you mentioned Anion, it was really funny because there were a couple of scrims where we'd scrim NYXL and they would like go 50-50 or we'd be winning. And then they would sub Anion in, and I swear those players started just throwing the game. I remember Kellen walked up Midtown, like first point. He had his grab, and they were losing fights, and he shot it straight in the air. Like the first map Anion came in, Kellen just walked up mid, shot his grab in the air, and just threw the game. So to close it out, I think Kellen's a sexist.
True.
Kellen's a sexist! The title! Finally!
Finally.
3 hours in, we got it.
Thank you,
God.
Thank you. That team actually, just for like,
No, in reality, he was just tilted after a lost scrim.
They had all the same problems as Washington, right? Where like just on paper that roster never looked like it was going to be cohesive. Like it just had disaster written all over it.
I think that org, like the upper management people at the org throughout the season would occasionally like force playtime of their marginalized roster pickups, because they picked up Haley and Anian during the marginalized roster build where they were going to do a full roster of marginalized players. And then afterwards it was just, they settled for like, I will do 2. But they were like, why aren't they playing? Why aren't they in scrims? Why aren't they in matches? So eventually they started to get like more pressure from top down, saying like you need to give these people playtime because otherwise there's no point them being there. So I think that even though it didn't really make any sense, maybe if you ever saw like an Anian map in scrims or something like that, it was because they were essentially, I think the staff was being forced to play them because of the higher ups basically being like, we signed these people, you have to play them. But it didn't make sense.
I think you're right. I'm sure it was like there was a specific amount of like time that they were meant to get per week or something. I think they changed it as the season went on to maybe we should get an NYXL person on to tell us. But I think it was like the first half of the season there was way more like requirements for those players to play. And then maybe towards the end it was just like the same kind of like 5 or 6 in every single scrim.
Yeah. Is this misinformation, or didn't Shock have something similar for a long period of time where they needed to have a Western player on the starting roster? Or am I just talking out of my ass?
No, there was definitely no restriction for that.
Like
even,
org requirement. Yeah.
Even last year, I don't know if we played it in a match ever, but we were considering putting Proper on Zarya and then Striker on Reaper and Kilo on Sojourn,
Okay,
and like just play a full Korean roster. It was being toyed around with scrims. I don't think it ever made it to match day, but it was a concept. So there was never like, oh, we have to have this Western player play. No, we don't need our token. We played them because we thought they were good.
Yeah, I guess Shock have always had some of the best Western players as well mixed in there, which makes it a little bit more reasonable to play him consistently.
Yeah, it's like when you've got Super on your team, it's like, he's not a token white guy. But when you've got Luke Minorenko, it's like shit. There might be something a bit different here.
You saying they're not as good as Super?
Hot take.
Yeah, molten take to close out the cast. Like, me and Luke Fish are going to be squaring off at the next LAN. I know that much for sure. Fuck.
All right, then client of the week.
It's
so we recorded the Astro episode quite soon after the Gator bombshell episode. So a lot of the Twitter discourse afterwards we didn't get a chance to address. But I want to give a special shout out to my good friend Monte Cristo, and I want to nominate him for client of the week. Have you got the tweet up so I can see it?
I've literally got it.
Yeah. Basically, I don't inherently blame people for commenting on the title without watching the video. I think that's almost why we did the title, right? Like, I think, obviously, I prefer it if you attempted to watch and listen to what we said. But if you want to just talk about the clickbait. But when he says, why? Like, what he effectively said with his tweet was the reason that he assumed that the reason we said that Koreans were in the Overwatch League is we were just saying, oh, Koreans are so much better than us. That's why the league is ruined. Like,
it's just boring, right? It's boring.
Yeah,
it's so one-sided.
Yeah. And what I replied to him was like something along the lines of like, oh yeah, presumably the league would still be alive, would be in this paradise, would all be on 400k salaries if it was just like white guys winning the league, as if that's what he assumed that we meant. And it couldn't possibly anything to do with the fact that it failed towards a Western audience where most of the people who were in the league couldn't speak English. So I think that Monte Cristo not only just didn't watch the podcast fair enough, he also took the worst possible take out of the title. Because how dumb does he think we are to the point where we would actually make a 3-hour podcast and just say, oh, we're so shit compared to the Koreans and it's not fair. Like, that's what he
Why are they so good?
They ruined it for me. That's what Monte Cristo felt. Like, and he's like, yeah, that 3-hour podcast, that's probably what those white guys said. The thing is with Monty is like his unique selling point, the thing that he prides himself on is being a white guy that like lives and knows about Korean culture, So even though he's expressed similar things about the Overwatch League where there was a lack of personalities and it killed it, more than anything, he needs people to know that he has lived a long time in Korea and he understands Korean culture.
I think
so. Yeah, I really want to vote Monty for Client of the Week.
If we're short on personality, maybe we need Semler back. He was. Yeah.
He's been getting a lot of interactions lately.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I see him all over Twitter recently. So surely, like, if we need personality, yeah.
Good friend of Monte Cristo's, Semler, isn't he?
Yeah, I vote for the Monty Client of the Week for sure. Although I do think we need to give an honorable mention to Uber Shouts for jumping up on the high horse immediately and saying, how's the title necessary? Because like our podcast is already so compelling that like people will just be watching regardless. Like he's saying, the content's so, like the compelling. It's already compelling by virtue of who's on the show. But it's like, mate, we're a few episodes deep here and nobody's fucking watching.
What do you reckon of the odds that Uber had not heard of a podcast until this vast tweet?
Well,
100%. Yeah.
So it's basically got to be Client of the Week for all the ex-Overwatch League casters that commented on your podcast. And Semler.
Yeah, to be fair, I actually do think Semler has a real chance to earn Client of the Week this week because it does seem like he's really been going off the deep end on Twitter.
If you want to talk about
generational
bridges,
run,
he's burned some bridges.
This guy burns bridges like nobody else. It's actually incredible what he puts out on Twitter. There was one more that I don't know who posted it, but they said that something about how our title was about us forgetting that that there was the Dallas players got abused one time and about like stop Asian hate, and somehow
that was another banger.
Our title that Koreans ruined Overwatch League is somehow equating to racism against Asian people in America, which I thought surely has to be a stretch. Also, Chef Billy, I know you watched the show, when you said, yes, okay, you obviously co-signed that, so I think you are a client for sure too. So just to let you know, I think that was an extremely clienty comment. But I don't know, I just feel like, even though I feel like that last was the most client, I feel like Monty just deserves it. You know, there's something about him that just, he is a client, you know?
Monty just deserves a medal.
The thing is as well, like Monty makes a lot of content as well, obviously. And I'm sure if people did this to his video, it'd wind him right up. Like, I feel like I've heard Nat Crowd, like Thorin and Richard Lewis talk about very much the same thing of like, so many times you'll get people in the comments who just don't even watch the fucking video and they just respond to the point they think you made in the video. What a bunch of fucking idiots. But,
That's
you know,
it.
What goes around comes around, I guess.
If you get an opportunity to defend the Koreans and you're Monte Cristo, then that's an extra social credit score or whatever it is, you know? So, fucking Monty, fucking, you're a client.
All right. So we've named probably our most famous client of the week so far. So we're definitely trending upwards. Like soon we can start taking shots at like real major world figures in our client of the week. So we're building up to it. Then the only segment left is where we rank the guests. So the tier list so far, I should probably write it down at some point because it got too messy, but Gator seems to be our number one by a stretch. And then tiebreaker last week to put Astro into second, followed by Danny and Haddy, bottom of the pile.
Your mic's muted, Chris. You fucking client.
Yeah, no, it was intentional. I think this is actually going to be a really pivotal. Like we're at a crossroads in our podcasting journey, right? Because what we did with Astro and Gator is we just like got like incredible juice and burnt tons of bridges. I think what we've had here is actually quite a reasonable decision where I think apart from Kellen, no one has been like run under the bus, you know? If this podcast doesn't do as well as the previous ones, then I feel like we're just going to have to lean fully into just like leaking everything. Don't talk about anything intelligent and just go down the full on, just like burn every bridge, as much drama as possible. If this episode does well and people actually enjoy like nuanced discussion about various things and storytelling, then this maybe opens up a more normal avenue for us. So this is the interesting one. It doesn't necessarily help with the ranking, but I just thought I'd say that.
Yeah, because we can't just hindsight rank it and just rank it based on views. We need to.
Yeah. I think it goes somewhere in the middle. I think it's not as is not. Who did we put above? Daniel or Danny? Who went?
Daniel was above Danny.
Yeah. Should we put it in the middle of those two?
I mean, I think for me, I'd put this above Funny Astro because I feel like you know there was a little bit there's just like a wider range of discussion and stuff like that.
It was.
This podcast did fucking go forever, you know, for better or worse.
I think this is the longest one, and I think your viewers want a little bit more, so it might affect. You know, I think.
Don't fucking gas yourself up.
It's time for this. We won't add a little bit onto your salary for this.
Yeah, but no, I'll put this second. You know,
second. Yeah, I think that Get one's never getting touched, unfortunately.
That was the start of your careers. Nobody watched this before that point.
Literally, yes.
It was so compelling, though. I don't get it. I don't know. It was so compelling.
All right.
But yeah, I'm in agreement. I think second.
Okay.
So we do continue our trend of just very generous rankings to people while they're in front of us. So
that's it.
Eventually, someone will buck the trend.
Line. This is the line where me and Gator are solidly on the
All right, then I think that's everything. Thank you very much, Cass, for all your time. We'll send the invoice to Toronto.
Wait, you have to pay them.
Can we get the sponsored by Bell Graphics or?
I mean, if you start putting them up like on the screen, like Bell,
I think you should just randomly just drop
AMD.
Bell in the middle of it, like for no reason, just Bell.
Just every time like something controversial happens, like Kellen is a sexist, sponsored by Bell.
Yeah, you know how some like podcasts have to bleep everything out and they put something over the mouth, just like a Bell logo over the mouth whenever anyone has to say something horrendous.
You know what we had in Toronto? Every room we have in our facility has a name. So we have the Bell 5 Zones, our practice room. We have the TD Player Lounge, and we have the Red Bull Gaming Studio.
Fuck.
And
We had the
those are
London
sponsors.
House.
there you go, the London Spitfire House.
That's what ours was called.
We had the LCS house, which in many ways was the reason our team was funded. So it's kind of an indirect sponsor.
And we had the cum closet too, but that's a
And the
story for
cum
a different
closet.
time.
That's a cliffhanger.
I don't think
Got to keep them
Next
coming back
episode, they'll
more,
talk to you about the cum closet.
we-
I won't be here, but they'll tell you about it.
Oh, jeez.
All right.
All right.
Goodbye.
Yep. Signing off.